Every day in the U.S., 47 children are diagnosed with cancer. Statewide nonprofit Children's Cancer Connection serves more than 780 Iowa families affected by childhood cancer. It provides new diagnosis resources, camps, family outings, and much more, all free of charge. This September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. How aware are you? Learn more, volunteer, or donate at childrenscancerconnection.org. That's childrenscancerconnection.org. Iowa Postgame with Coach John Patterson. Man alive, this has been a weird 5 weeks. We're talking about an Iowa victory this evening, folks, and a lot of happy Hawkeye fans this evening, but a lot of cautiously nervous and uneasy, unsteady. I'm anxious to see what the overall tenor of this evening's broadcast is. Not from me, not from Coach John Patterson, but from you, the fans. As you saw probably before we jumped on live, you see the Brian Ferentz points per game tracker. We're trending upward with the 26 points scored, albeit 7 points coming from directly from special teams, Cooper DeJean specifically, with the big punt six, if you want to call it that, the punt return for a touchdown, 70 yards on the return for Cooper. What a play by the Odebolt, Iowa native. And this game was closer than the score would indicate. Again, the final is 26-17, but man alive. It looked like for a while that as Iowa fell down by 6 in the third quarter, it looked like they were going to have problems climbing out of a hole. This is not a team, not a program that's built or designed to return from any deficit at any point in the game. That's one of the biggest things that I think Iowa structurally working within the confines of what they believe in as a program with philosophy and scheme and all that. One of the things I think they should work at improving, if you're going to, you're going to stand pat, you're going to keep things kind of the status quo, if you will, moving forward. Boy, you got to figure out a way to take advantage of those first couple of drives. It seems like Iowa's tried to do that where they've had momentum on opening drives. You look at that Cade McNamara-led drive, the opening drive of the game tonight, and they end up settling for a field goal. Those are the drives where you got to punch it in for 6. But obviously, the focus of tonight's show is likely going to be Cade McNamara, the injury situation. And based on what I was told, folks, during the broadcast, and this is nothing official from Iowa, I have not listened to Kirk Ferentz. I'm assuming he's talking to the media right now. We're expected to get word from Tom Kakert of HawkeyeReport.com. He jumps on with us for a few minutes after every Iowa game, following a media availability with Kirk Ferentz. But from a pretty good source who I trust that reached out to me during the game, or actually I reached out to this source and they got back to me with the information on Cade. Based on what I've been told, no surprises. It's not good. And I will be surprised. Now, this is jumping the gun because it's nothing official from Iowa, but I will be surprised if we see Cade play another down at Iowa this year. Based on what I was told. Now, I hope that information, I hope that's just, I hope that's not true. I hope that we're going to get better news. I'm sure we're not going to get definitive news from Kirk Ferentz today. And I'm guessing that nobody's going to have definitive news today. I'm guessing that we'll have to wait for MRIs tomorrow. But from what I was told, it was knee related. That was what I was told, not quad. It was knee related. By the way, for our callers who are on hold, man alive, just stay patient, folks. My goodness, can I have my little dialogue first? We're going to get to the calls. The link to join via StreamYard is I think it's in the description, right? Yeah, it's in the description. If anybody wants to join via StreamYard, we've got about 630 people on between the two channels. We're simulcasting right now from the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube, as well as our sister channel, Iowa Football, at the Voice of College Football Network channel on YouTube. So if you want to join, I'll go ahead and throw the live studio link in the chat. If you want to jump on, feel free to do that. And again, we're awaiting Coach John Patterson, who will be joining us in just a few minutes to talk about the 26-16 victory this evening in Kinnick. What a night for football. Great weather, great environment, the blackout environment. And I'll give Deacon Hill a lot of credit. And I've been critical of some things related to Iowa's quarterback situation, even this year, regarding weight. And I've talked about Deacon Hill at 260 pounds, concerns that I've had regarding mobility, and those concerns, I maintain those concerns, folks. He's not the most mobile in the world. So I maintain those concerns, but at the same time, I want to make clear he played as well as one could have expected him to play, given the circumstances this evening. That's not a very good Michigan State team. We all need to remember that. All right. So obviously, gutsy win, right? Coming back from behind, they lose their quarterback, they lose another their offensive lineman. Remember, they're already down their top tight end, their two top running backs. So they're dealing with injuries. They're dealing with the 31-0 loss in Happy Valley last week. They had some unfortunate things happen in this game. I think about the fumble that was returned for 6 for the Spartans, kind of a freak play where the ball's stripped out of LaShawn Williams' arms, goes right into a Michigan State player's arms. He returns it for 6. And that's an unfortunate thing. It kind of a wrong place at the wrong time, or I guess you could say from a Spartan standpoint, the right place at the right time. Iowa dealt with that difficulty and found a way to push through. You look at the defensive performance. Yes, they gave up yards again. Do I think this is as good of a defense as last year? I'm going to probably say no at this point. I thought heading into the year it had a chance of being collectively just as good as last year due to the increased depth on that defensive line, the return of Cooper DeJean, the addition of Nick Jackson via the transfer portal. So far, we're not seeing the pressure on the opposing quarterback that we hoped we'd see. And I think Noah Shannon being out hurts a little bit. But overall, they just don't have that game breaker and that defensive line like they have in past years. They don't have an A.J. Epinesa, a Drew Ott, an Adrian Claiborne, a Lucas Van Ness. They just don't have that guy. Joe Evans, very good pass rusher, but he's undersized. If he's your number one, it's kind of like when Zach Van Valkenburg was the number one guy. Like really solid motor, really solid Big Ten defensive lineman, but he's not, he's not a Lucas Van Ness. He's not an A.J. Epinesa. He's none of these guys up front right now. At least none of the DNs I don't foresee them having some great future on a mock draft board. Deontay Craig, I think a lot of us felt like he had a shot, and maybe he still does. He's still young, but we just don't. So far, we've not seen anybody break through and prove to be the type of disruptor that Iowa's had. And when you can at least have one of those guys, I think some of us were hoping that a guy like Aaron Graves on the interior could be that guy. It's just a different position. I'll be anxious to get Coach Patterson's perspective on what we aren't seeing from Iowa's defensive line. I thought the DBs really stepped up today. Cooper DeJean is just absolutely phenomenal. And I guess we can get into that right away. What a pair of plays. Not only the punt six, the return, the 70-yard punt return for a touchdown that really broke the game open. It was 16-16 late in the fourth. He gets that punt return for a touchdown. That was all she wrote. But also, how about that play in the end zone in the first half? Cooper DeJean tracking the ball better than the receiver. And what a play, and getting his foot down in the back of the end zone. That was, you could argue those were the two biggest plays in the game. One could argue that. The missed field goal attempt by Michigan State in the fourth quarter was obviously big, went off the right upright. It's a game of inches, and those are the inches that you love to win, and you hate to lose if you're Michigan State. And by the way, I feel bad for Michigan State. This is a program that's been enveloped by mud and dirt and unfortunate things. It's not these kids' fault that the situation with Mel Tucker and that program has transpired as it has. I feel really bad for all those players. Now, it's easier to say that when your team wins. I get that. But I do feel bad for them. I feel bad for their head coach. And they got problems. I mean, they just got problems, obviously. They fought tonight. I give them credit. They competed. But they got problems. A lot of penalties, a lot of turnovers. That's been kind of the MO ever since the Mel Tucker controversy began here a few weeks ago. So a lot more to get to, folks. But again, we got about 700 people on right now. Let's go ahead and get to our first caller. Bobby's on hold. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Got in here first, not like 3 hours in like I usually do.
I threw you a bone, Bobby. How's that?
I was joining earlier and it wasn't working. I didn't know it didn't go up right away, so I was like a little concerned. I was like, maybe it's just not working. Got a new phone.
StreamYard wasn't working for you?
Right when the stream started, it was still showing the last one, but when you put the link in chat, it worked. So.
Oh, you know what? Maybe that's the issue. I'm glad you said that, Bobby, because that could be an issue, folks.
Could be the one in the description's wrong.
Yeah, let's make sure that's correct. You go ahead and give your whatever you have to say. You go off in your tangent, Bobby. I'll get this fixed. Or do you have a tangent?
I think the play calling was really that bad. I think we realize now why the receivers don't really have many targets. Some of those guys got like stones for just hands on some of those. I know he's throwing it pretty hard. Like I'll give him that.
No,
Deacon's throwing some bullets, but still, you're college receiver. You got to catch those. I just watching some of those. I'm like, those are all catchable.
Yeah, I think the idea that somehow it's Deacon Hill's fault that his receivers were dropping everything tonight, I think that's a faulty way of looking at it.
Yeah,
I go back to 2009. You remember the game right after Ricky Stanzi went down against Northwestern, and James Vandenberg played one of the best games I've seen from an Iowa quarterback in the history of the Kirk Ferentz era, and had a lot of drops. Trey Strauss, I remember, dropped some balls in that game. A number of balls in that game, and I heard a lot of people during the game and after the game, he's throwing too hard of a ball. I mean, good Lord, he's putting the ball right in the numbers, and I saw Deacon Hill do that several times. Deontay Vines has got to catch that football. Caleb Brown has got to catch that football. I get he's not been thrown too much. You got to catch a football. That's it. That is a basic catch on a comeback route for Caleb Brown. Trying to think of who else had a drop tonight. Eric All had one early. But yeah, I mean, that's got to get cleaned up because the margin for error is too small with this Iowa offense.
Yeah, it was just a few of those, and you just like that's your job. Catch the ball and do what you need to do. Other than that, I mean, a win's a win. I was just hoping the game wasn't going to overtime because it wasn't fun to. Because no offense to Michigan State, I know things are a little bit turmoil over there, but they also were just not good either. It was just looking ugly on both sides, and like man Cooper just doing everything for the team. Hey, it may be a little bit of a joke, but I'm saying throw him in at quarterback. You never know what he can do.
Not a
He's
joke.
doing
Not
doing
a,
everything else otherwhere.
some people think that's a joke. What was it that Jim Boeheim said in 2020 when a media reporter asked him uh, or thought he was being disingenuous about an officiating call after a game, and he said, "I do make jokes, but that's not a joke." I would say the same thing. I do make jokes. That's not a joke. I've commented on Cooper DeJean playing offense, and I just think uh, it has nothing to do with him taking on a full-time role. It's called being innovative and thinking outside the box and utilizing a guy's skill set. And we'll see what happens right now. Based on what I was told during the game, and I think people could surmise that based on what you saw of Cade McNamara and him going off by cart and being on crutches there at the end of the during the game. Um, I think it's likely he's going to miss significant time. Maybe it's unfair to me without confirmation of this to be able to say, yeah, he's done for the year. He's gonna miss significant time. So uh, you just got to be innovative. Believe me, I'm happy about this win. This is not a good Michigan State team, so you got to think outside the box more now than ever, whatever that
Yeah,
means.
yeah,
I
because
don't think it's outlandish.
especially with Cade going out, I don't really think Deacon looked like bad at all. It's just it's it's still an offense that's not made to be great, and then you put in backup quarterbacks. It's just gonna you just hope things work out, man. Is really all it is. But I don't
Well,
know. When I saw
keep
him
in
go
mind
down,
too,
I was like, oh god, that's not great.
yeah, keep in mind as we were heading into the year, and this is one of the reasons why I had advocated for them to sit him against Western Michigan. And I know that hindsight is 2020, but the idea was you get him healthy and he's more mobile. He's much more mobile than Deacon Hill, and he's much more mobile than Spencer Petras was last year. Now, a hampered Cade McNamara, a gimpy Cade McNamara, probably not. And that's kind of what we got the first 4.25 games this season. But you're right. I mean, Deacon is not going to give you. He's going to give you. He's got a bigger arm than Cade. I think that's probably fair. But he's not he's not proven to be the competitor that Cade McNamara is. I don't know accuracy wise. I thought he threw some nice balls today. He made a couple of questionable decisions, threw an interception, threw it into triple coverage at one point. Nearly got in trouble on that last drive. Was it last drive or second to last drive? On the deflected pass that ended up being called incomplete, which was the right call, but that could have easily been a pick. So this game could have easily went a different way. Purdue's going to be a challenge because Purdue they just throttled Illinois today, and they're an improving team with a young coaching staff. So back to the drawing boards. It's going to be a busy week for the staff.
Yeah, and I don't keep up with a lot of the injury report. Is Labus hurt or
That I'm aware of. No,
just
he's as far as I'm aware of. The availability report came out prior to the game, and he is not listed. So no, I think Deacon Hill's just the number 2 guy right now. And frankly, based on what we saw and what we've seen preseason, I think he's got just as good of an arm as Labus, maybe even a little bit better. And I think he picks things based on what I've been told. He picks things up quicker than Labus does.
okay?
So,
I think that's last thing. I know you've mentioned Kirk not being maybe not coaching next year, retirement or anything. And I don't know if you've ever like given your thoughts on like who you'd want as a head coach next. like having people brought up, who is it, LeVar as the head coach option at that point, or would you try to go somewhere else? Like, I don't know. The only person I can think of that I don't really know many quarterbacks anywhere else. Like, I don't think they're ever going to give him up. But like Chris Kleiman, I highly doubt K State gives us him. But hey, that'd be nice.
Well, we'll say this, and we don't have to. I have talked about that in the past, Bobby, and we can. It's going to be a discussion we're going to have more and more as the year goes on, and as the months to whatever the end of Kirk Ferentz's time here at Iowa continue to count down. I will say this: as I was watching that game this evening, I'm thinking, man, this team is coming off a 31-0 loss. They're down there starting quarterback. There's basically no offense. Like, this offense hasn't existed for 3 years. And yet you look at the crowd, Bobby, and what do you see?
They're all there.
They're all there, and they're nuts. The environment in that stadium is electric. That's coming off a 31-0 loss with maybe the worst offense in the Power 5. And the students are there, and it's a nutso environment. The reason I bring that up is that's a big part of the reason why I cannot imagine a scenario in which Iowa couldn't attract a good name. I don't know how big of a name, but the idea that Iowa's not a good job, there's too much support in this program, and it's just too passionate of a fan base for me to convince myself that it's not a good job, a really good job. So I am not fearful of the post-Kirk era for that reason. Do I realize it's a risk? Sure. Nebraska, look what's happened to Nebraska. Everyone wants to bring that up. That's a great job. Look at the passion in that fan base, and yet it hasn't worked out. It doesn't always work out. But I have no doubt, Bobby, that when that time comes, when Kirk decides to step away, whether that's this year or that's in 2029, if they have the right person leading the charge as it relates to the interview process and the hiring process, they will get a good big name. They can get a good big name because it's a good job.
Yeah. You can see it and you can hear it. They're passionate there. It's the same thing when watching Nebraska games. You sit there and you're like, these people still show up, and that's even worse than watching Iowa play it sometimes. But hey, football's football. People love it. It was the only game I got to watch all day today. I was kind of a little upset with that.
Well, it had it's had its fair share of almost everything: injuries, special teams, turnovers. Not many big plays offensively. I guess that'd be the one thing that were there any super explosive plays? Were there any? I'm trying to think of explosive plays in this game. Were there any explosive plays? That's a great question. Let me look at the official box score. Can you think of any, Bobby, off the top of your head?
I can't think of many offensive plays outside of the first couple by all in the beginning. Him breaking a couple of those tackles for that touchdown was nice, but
for either team. So I'm seeing Iowa. Yeah. So let's see. Deacon Hill had a 32-yard pass to Eric All. So there's one explosive play, and then the 23-yard pass and catch and run by Deontay Vines. But boy, 9 targets for Deontay, just 3 catches. He's got to clean up some of those drops. But the good news is they targeted him 9 times. That's good. That means they're trying to get the receivers involved. So 2 explosive plays for Iowa, and just 1 explosive play. One explosive play for Michigan State. So those are really good numbers. Iowa's given up 1 explosive play over the last 2 weeks. Say what you want about this defense declining. Those are solid numbers against 2 East Division foes, regardless if one of them is Michigan State.
Yeah. I think the main thing with people being a little less on the defense is just quarterback pressure. I think is like the biggest thing. It just doesn't look like it's there as much as I think fans would want, but they're still doing their job.
Yeah. Absolutely, sir. I appreciate it.
I will let you get through this long stream, and I'll be here folding laundry listening.
Appreciate it, man. All right, folks. We are trekking along here. In case you missed that at the beginning of that conversation with Bobby, I think we did have an issue, and I've had several people bring it up to my attention. I think we did have an issue with the StreamYard link that should be updated. If you don't have the link, or if you're not being able to get into StreamYard with the link that's in the description, refresh your stream or click on the link that I threw up in the live chat. All right. and I'll throw it up. I'll continue to throw it up in the live chat. But if you want to join the show or call into the show via StreamYard, do so by means of the link I'm throwing up in the live chat, or refresh your stream and click on the link in the description to join the show and talk football. I'm with you until Don Patterson gets here, and then we'll have to kind of speed calls along. That's one thing last week, folks, I'm just telling you right now, 4 hours. We went over 4 hours last week, and I love Iowa football. I love talking with all you. I love talking with Don. It's one of the highlights of my week, but I can't go 4.5 hours. So, and Don shouldn't be going 4.5 hours. I don't want anybody getting blood clots. So anyways, we're going to try to speed those calls along as Coach Patterson gets here, and we'll have Tom Kakert on for a few minutes as well. Let's get to our phone line. And thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Who's on the line?
Yeah, so I called in, obviously, like the other guy said.
James, how are you?
Good, how are you doing? Obviously, we're better now with the win. But first off, one thing I want to say, and I have people that coached in basketball in high school that work in the Iowa recruiting office. So I asked them the minute Cade went down, and they said the same thing to me, like it's probably off the years. So obviously, I think that's the most important thing, is like just wish him recovery, wish him the best in his recovery. Obviously, it's good to get the win for him, but I think that's more the bigger thing, wish him his best for recovery, and hopefully he can come along healthy out of this, whether he chooses to pursue the rest of his career or not. I think that's most important out of this.
He's had a turmoil-filled couple of years as it relates to his health, and I feel bad for the kid. He's such a confident leader, and I don't know. Yeah, are we ever going to see him play again at Iowa? I don't know. Maybe he will come back next year. I mean, he's not going to get drafted. I can't imagine him getting drafted in April. Like, if he's done for the year, James, you think he's going to get a late flyer? I don't.
I mean, I was going to say, if he played this whole year and he struggled a little bit, I would have said maybe what he did at Michigan might have got him. But since he's not playing this whole year, I don't think he will.
He's coming off two neat. Well, I don't want. Again, we'll see what Tom Kakert says. We'll see what Kirk said today. But he's potentially coming off 2 serious knee injuries. So I know we're jumping the gun on that. Let's wait to see what the official word is. But I feel really bad for Cade.
For sure. And one thing I want to say is I agree with the last call. I do think Deacon didn't look that bad. And as a receiver, you have to catch most of those. I guess he's throwing you hard, but a lot of them hit him in the hands. Like, he was making good throws. They just weren't catching them. And I think that's what's most important. Like, you're supposed to catch the ball in those situations. Like, Eric had a drop earlier, but he made up for it with the touchdown. And even LaShawn, I feel like LaShawn late in the game made up for it by not fumbling, keeping the game, keeping
first
the
of all,
moving.
Hold on a second, James. Let me disagree with you on something. And I think Coach Patterson, he's waiting in the queue, and I think he probably heard what you just said, and I think he would agree with me on this. You do not make up for a drop. That drop is still on the tape, and that drop's still got to be corrected, because that drop could have still been the difference between a win and a loss. Or I mean, that's just reality, right? So
yeah.
That's got to be corrected. You're right. Eric played great as the game went on. He's a weapon. He's an athlete. He's an incredible athlete. But it's across the board. I mean, we got problems with drops with Eric All, with Deontay Vines, with Caleb Brown had a drop. So yeah, you go around the receiving core, they got problems to clean up there.
For sure. And one thing I was saying in the first half, I kind of feel like the defense, and I feel like obviously they did this forever, right? But they kind of gave Michigan State life early by the way they were playing, by the way they played their usual defense. So they play off, they give you 5-7 yards, here and there. And we weren't really scoring, so it kind of was giving them a little bit of life. And then the fumble happened, and I kind of in my head was like, we just needed a touchdown. We couldn't get that other touchdown until late, but I was like, in my head was like, we just need a touchdown. I felt like it was flip. And, the fans, especially on I think it was the last drive when they got like 3 false starts and 2 false starts. Yeah, 3rd and 2, whatever. That's when they come into our advantage.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that Iowa tends to, especially when the sun goes down and the lights come on in Kinnick. It seems like in big moments, and that's what I just admire about that crowd. I mean, just things have gone horribly wrong for this team over the last 2 weeks in many respects, and yet the crowd is still there. And the guys pulled through, and you got to give everybody involved credit, including the Iowa fans who showed up this evening.
For sure. What's your thoughts on if we have to go Deacon going forward? Do you think it changes your 10-2 narrative, or?
Probably a little bit. Yes, probably.
That would be what I was.
I don't know how much it influences it. Now you remember I did make the comment, James. I said it several times prior to the season. I said Iowa's got a chance of going 10-2, 11-1. If what was the if?
If Cade stayed healthy.
Bingo. So, am I ruling it out? No, but I was cautiously optimistic. I was impressed mildly with what I saw from Deacon tonight. I just am telling you that's not a very good Michigan State defense. But Deacon Hill came in there and did what he needed to do, made some nice throws. Receivers got to clean some things up, and Deacon had some questionable decisions. But overall, I would give him a passing grade for his first real career action. I know he played a little bit last week, but he really hasn't played until tonight.
For sure. One thing that scares me is like we couldn't run very well again. I mean, obviously everyone else might be inflated by the last two drives, you know what I mean, where we just handed it off the whole time. But like when it actually matters, we couldn't really run it very well, and that's one of the weaker Big Ten defenses. And that kind of scares me in retrospect. Like if we play, like obviously we got Wisconsin coming up. I don't know how good Purdue is, but like that just scares me. Like we still seem to not be able to run the football.
Yeah. No, they have no ground game right now. They really don't. So that's a problem. Final stats, and they did break off a couple there late, but final stats in the game, as far as rushing is concerned, LaShawn Williams 12 carries for 42 yards. A little bit better than I expected, but then again, he had a couple of late ones. Kamari Moulton, 9 carries, 25 yards, average of 2.8 per carry. Terrell Washington Jr., 1 catch for 3 yards.
Yeah, for sure. And it will be interesting to see what happens next week against Purdue, and hopefully, obviously, Deacon gets a full week of practice, so hopefully we can build a little bit of chemistry with the guys. And we got a chance to get another one next week, so we just got to focus on that. And Cooper is here to save the day. So at the end of the day, Cooper has been that guy his whole career. I think saved the day, had a big pick that because if they score a touchdown there, I think that game would have been over on the interception.
Yeah, that's it. Like I said, those are maybe the two biggest plays in the game. I think likely the two biggest plays in the game.
Yep, and he always seems to save the day and come through. And obviously, great hit by Jay Higgins to force the fumble and give us the win. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. You're 4-1. They don't look at how ugly you're 4-1. You know what I mean? They just look at you as 4-1. The only thing that scares me is, and I don't think this is going to happen, but I know this would be in other people's minds, right? Is if, we don't win, or we don't win that many more games, and then they're like, we didn't have Cade, so that's why we didn't win. So maybe Brian gets another chance. I don't think that will happen, but I know there's people that do think that will happen. I've seen that on Twitter a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Whether they're going to use that as an excuse.
That narrative's going to be out there.
For sure. But all right, talk to you later. Enjoy your night. I know you got a lot of callers on the phone, and a win is a win, and we'll take it and on to next week. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it, sir. Always enjoy talking to James, loyal listeners here. And speaking of loyalists, we've got Coach John Patterson, who is standing by. Coach Patterson, welcome.
I was doing the best I could to be a listener.
You were doing the best you could to be a listener. Is that what you said, Don?
Be a loyal listener, yes.
Loyal listener. Well, appreciate that. And Don, it's 11 o'clock. You made it home safely. That's always a good thing after a night game at Kinnick. Lots to get to, man. Lots to get to this evening. Where do you want to start? I guess the priority would be the biggest storyline, and that is Cade McNamara. I don't know what you've heard. I mean, we're half hour removed from the end of the game. I was told on pretty good authority during the game that it's serious and it's knee related. But I've nothing official there. We're waiting for Tom Caker to jump on following availability with Kirk. Just your thoughts on the situation, Don.
Well, it's unfortunate. It gets back to the fact that, I'll put it this way, a quarterback, the best chance for a quarterback to stay healthy is for him to be provided with good protection from his pass blockers, primarily O-line, of course, and for him to be at his athletic best. And what's unfortunate, of course, is Cade was playing at less than his athletic best, which makes him a little more vulnerable. So if he's 100% healthy, maybe he would have survived that play just fine, but he wasn't. And you're a little more injury prone when you're less than 100%.
All right. If I just real quick, I just want to address this. If you're calling in on the phone line, I'm not going to put you ahead in the queue just because you hang up and call back. So just please be patient. If you're calling in on the phone line, when you drop out, you're going to go back to the end of the queue. And I just want to make that clear because we have people that continue to call in and then hang up and then call in and then hang up. So just you're going to call in, fine, but please be patient because you're not going to be jumping ahead of anybody. Let's talk a little bit about the run game, Don. More struggles. LaShawn Williams broke off a couple late, ended up with a 3.2 yard average, which is more than I would have expected if you had asked me what I thought the team average was. It actually ended up being 2.3 when you take sacks into account. What did you think of the run game overall? It just seems to be non-existent. This was not a good Michigan State defense. They ranked, I believe, 9th or 10th in the conference in rush defense heading into this game.
Yeah, let me say this for Michigan State. I really fully expected a team much more in disarray than the one we saw tonight. I had to give them credit. I thought they had a solid plan coming in and executed pretty well and didn't shoot themselves in the foot too much at all, played with pretty good poise on the road. This was their first road game, right?
Correct.
So overall, I was more impressed with Michigan State than what I expected. Having said that, I think you're right. I don't think they're going to be fighting for the East title, that's for sure. They're going to finish as an also-ran, I do believe. But I was impressed that they played. I thought they played hard, didn't give up, made an interesting game all the way through, did all those things. So I give credit to their coaches and the players for putting up a good fight, I thought, because I think they are limited with what they can do. One thing that comes to mind for me, you got a pretty good picture tonight of the benefit of having a more mobile quarterback. There were times when somebody took Kim and said, okay, we're just going to run around the end here. And oh, by the way, that back's offset to the side of the sweep. So because you're carrying the ball, we picked up an extra blocker. So let's see if we can't do some good with that. And I think they averaged at least 5 yards every time he ran the sweep. And, of course, he did a good job. He extended quite a few plays and did a decent job of throwing the ball away. I thought overall he played as well as you might expect a young guy to do. I think he's only a sophomore, isn't he? I think. I'm not sure. So on a positive note, we still only gave up, it looks like one play I see for Michigan State gained 20 yards.
Right.
So we did it was a repeat of Penn State in some ways. They had one explosive play tonight, not none as Penn State had. Let me verify that. Yeah, they did have a reception of 20 yards by Trey Mosley. According to this, I suspect that's right. And they outgained us in a lot of different areas, as you know. 20 first downs to 10. I'm sorry, 20 to 15. That's disappointing. Outrushed us considerably, almost by 100 yards. Hard to win when you get outrushed by 100 yards, but we were able to do it tonight. 156 versus our 61. Of course, they had a few more attempts than we did, but bottom line, their average was more than twice what ours was with yards per carry. Our three backs, if you look at them, they had 22 carries for 70 yards, so we averaged about 317 or something, less than 3.2 for the night. We didn't have a great completion percentage. I think you've already touched on it, Corey. Part of that was simply related to the fact that we didn't make the play when we had a chance to make it. Receivers had some chances that they weren't able to convert on. So I don't know how many drops. You had a better look at that than I did because you were sitting at home and able to chart that if you wanted to.
Well, I can tell you real quick that NBC posted a graphic during the game and they counted 6 drops.
Yeah. Well, that's probably accurate because whoever's doing that for NBC has a good idea what a drop should be. You've always heard me say a ball, if a receiver sells out and the ball skips off his fingertips, that is not a drop. But anything short of that, and yes, it is a drop. Our old adage was if you can touch it, you can catch it.
Right.
And that's what good receivers do.
Couple of questions here. First of all, I'm only reading this because it's a super chat. Brody, appreciate the super chat. He says Bacon Hill for president.
Is that a cousin of Deacon?
No, I think it's Deacon.
That's Deacon.
So thank you, Brody, for that. He's trying to get the trend, the nickname started. Brody, thank you for also becoming a member here on the show. So appreciate that from Brody. What did you think of Deacon overall, Don?
You know, he played a lot, kind of what I thought he would. He demonstrated tonight he's got a good live arm.
Yep.
That's a little bit of a problem. There are certain balls that require better touch. You know, it's okay. It doesn't have to always be a fastball. It's okay to take a prime example would be those guys playing on Sunday. If they have to really gun the ball, they do it. If they can take a little pace off the ball and still have it on target with a good catch, logically that's a better thing to do, of course, because the ball's a little bit easier to catch if it's not high velocity. So it looks to me like he doesn't really thoroughly understand touch yet. That's not a surprise at this point. That's something you kind of have to learn. But I do think he had a good awareness of the clock. It appeared we didn't have any of those issues. I think we took one timeout to avoid a delay. You know, I'm sure I'll be able to find a couple of 3 poor decisions in there. It's hard to play a football game as a quarterback without a poor decision, you know, because you have a chance to mess up a lot. And it may look easy from the seats. You know, you might say, why in God's name did he throw it to him? Because you saw another guy that was more open. Well, you had the vantage point of sitting 20 rows up and being able to see better than a guy can in the pocket, because these defensive players have an annoying habit of trying to wrestle you to the ground while you're back there trying to find a receiver. So receiver selection, not all bad, certainly. I mean, we hit some passes when we needed to. I will give credit to the coaches. I thought we did a better job to start the game by giving our guys a chance to throw some high percentage passes and showing some faith in our receivers that they might catch a short ball and be able to make someone miss. We did that. And for that matter, Michigan State did it to us some too. But at least I was glad to see that, because we were giving credit to our receivers. Listen, if we throw it to you 4 yards downfield, we don't expect you to gain 4. We expect you to have yards after the catch. And we had significant yardage after the catch. The most obvious would be the touchdown, of course, to Eric. Really nice job of running with the ball afterward. I know the defensive staff for Michigan State would probably simply say it's shoddy tackling, but we got to give some credit to Eric for being pretty violent with how he ran down the field. So that was good to see. I was impressed with their punter until we got into the fourth quarter, because our punter was more reliable than theirs. Theirs only shanked one all night, but he gave us a short field, gave us a chance to hit the tying field goal. And then, of course, on that last one, that's the ball that we would label as a returner, meaning it's got a lot of distance, but it doesn't have the hang time it should have. And that returner is going to have a chance to catch it and then figure out what he wants to do with it before anyone shows up to make a tackle. That's precisely what happened. Those last 2 punts cost him dearly. He was a good punter for most of the night, but those 2 absolutely ruined their evening, because they directly contributed to our last 10 points.
Don, can you slide your camera down a little bit, because I keep getting your face cut off whenever we get a comment. There we go. And we get to see the we did have the Iowa logo there.
Okay.
There we go. Okay.
Maybe I'll back up a little bit. That'll help.
You see, just real quick, Don, the points per game tracker. And by the way, for anybody that says that we're making a mountain out of a molehill, and shame on us for focusing on the points per game thing, NBC was talking about it tonight, and they kept using the term the drive to 325.
Yeah.
I just think it's ridiculous. But anyways, you see the little tracker up in the corner, Don. 22.
Maybe we shouldn't jinx ourselves and talk about the drive to 300. In other words, let's worry about 325 as a magic number after we've clinched a winning season, or at least won our 6th game, of course. We have a chance to go to a bowl at 6-6, I guess. I don't want to think about that. We should assume we need a better record than 6-6 to make it to a bowl game.
Well, but the point is, Don, if they go 6, if they don't make a bowl game, then that means the points per game thing doesn't matter anyways, because that's part of the criteria is they have to win 7 games.
Well, the 7th game can be the bowl game, though, right?
Yeah, but
your point is, if we don't have a chance to break that 6-6, then we're dead. We're not dead, but we didn't meet the contract.
Someone else is dead.
And then, yeah.
So real quick, let me switch places here. Just want everybody to see right here, right? That's the points per game tracker, and you see the little arrow going up. That means we're trending upwards. That means Brian is trending upwards. That's the little green arrow. But he's still in the red, Don. 22.2 points per game is where we're at right now. But
I was going to say, like a lot of our poor U.S. citizens right now, we're in the red with our budget in some cases, unfortunately.
So as it relates to points this evening, and I had a couple people prior to the game, I had predicted Iowa would win this game 25-10. It was a little closer to that than maybe it looked like for a while. It was a closer game than the final score would indicate, of course. But people say all the time, how are they going to get to 25 points? Well, they got to 26 tonight. It's not hard. When you score points on defense, when you score points on special teams, you get short fields. Like, you find a way to get points, Don, and they scored 26 points tonight. It felt like, for the most part, the offense really struggled all night long. You're
right. Let's give a lot of credit to Drew Stevens, of course, and Torrey's an exceptional holder, and for that matter, our snappers really, really reliable too. 4 for 4 on field goals, and I believe one of them was 53 maybe. I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, and just for the record, people around me were asking. They tend to do this, Coach, what would you do? We're 16-13, and there's 5 minutes left. And I told the truth. I said, honestly, this one's a hard decision. And this is before Kirk decided what to do. I said, if it were me, I'd kick it, because we need to eliminate this 3-point deficit now. And I had to believe if it went to overtime, we'd beat them in overtime. We gained some momentum there as the game played out, and I'm glad Kirk did that, because I would hate to think about us failing. And I reminded somebody nearby. Somebody said, "Well, my guys really need a yard," and I said, "Yeah." And after we gain that yard, we might turn around and have to kick a field goal 4 plays later anyway. So don't tell me that going for it guarantees a touchdown. Not nearly. It just guarantees a new set of downs. I think some people lose sight of that sometimes.
Well,
hope that makes sense.
I think people also lose sight of the fact that, and I wasn't terribly upset by that decision to kick the field goal. Don, isn't there also something to be said with the fact that they had shown the QB sneak earlier that drive? And it seems to me, without any hard data to support this comment, it seems to me that quarterback sneaks get harder to be successful with as you continue to do them, right? Because teams are going to continue to load up more and more as you go. Am I correct in saying that?
I think you're right.
So anyways, let's get to our phone line. We got a couple of people who have been on hold for quite some time. The B is here with us. The B, welcome.
Hey, gentlemen. Hope everyone is happy tonight. I do need to revise what I said last week, Corey. It comes with some caveat here. I said I thought we would lose, if you recall. The minute Cade went down, I actually thought we're going to win. And that's a horrible thing to say, but what I mean by that is Deacon Hill's skills and what he brings fits where Iowa is at talent-wise. And I think if they can get past Purdue, if they can get past Wisconsin, I think you can still count on your 10 wins. I think he just seems to fit the scheme better. I noticed he looked off some receivers even. I've never seen Cade do that yet. Cade he throws right to it.
So you're telling me that, just to clarify, you're
telling me. I know. It's embarrassing to say that because that was my prediction.
No. I'm asking you. You actually believe that Deacon Hill's a better option when healthy? With Cade McNamara healthy, you actually think Deacon Hill is still a better option?
I believe so. Because
that's a bold take.
Well, because of the talent at Michigan and how he won.
Okay.
What lifted him, and he was a perfect balance for whatever they had. For what we have, I liked everything about Deacon tonight. I really did. And it's kind of infectious. I felt really good after this game. I love the play calling. I did. I'm not going to lie to you. The line, obviously, some issues.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
I'm not. What was so special about the play calling? I'm just curious on this. I'm not saying it was bad play calling, but I've had a half a dozen people out here in the chat. Boy, Brian called a great game. I'm just curious. Maybe he did. Maybe Don's going to tell me that he did, but I'm just curious as to why you think that.
Because I think, okay, let's think of it like this. When Deacon is in the game, it's almost like we put lipstick on a pig. I'm not saying it's perfect, but at least some of the execution came through. I got to see some passes. I got to see some attempts. I saw some, let's try to get it down the field. Yeah, there was a lot of drop balls. They need to change their gloves or get some sticky gloves on or something. But just for what it was, it felt a little exciting. For the past few years, it's really hard to watch Iowa. It's not really a fun watch. It's very painful usually. So this actually felt exciting. Gave me a little bit of a rush. I kind of was like, took my Iowa flag and put out on my front porch again. And I was like, all right, I'm starting to feel this. Even we were behind. It just felt a little different to me. And it felt like the team is going to rally around this QB change. And it just felt different to me than most times. I know that's weird to say, but all of a sudden our defense starts getting picks. We run back, a touchdown. I think just like Coach said, Michigan State played really well, and I liked where they were at. I really did. I liked that team. I didn't think they were that bad of a team. So like I said, if they can get past Wisconsin and Purdue, they still got a chance. I mean, I can't help but think of when I saw him come in and they did the QB sneak. I thought of the Holiday Bowl with USC and Nate Stanley running over and over and over and just dominating, pushing. And I like the bigger quarterback, and it just felt different to me. So again, if Cade was in there and stayed in the game, I still think we would have lost. But having Deacon come in and other parts of the game stepped up, the defense, the return game, it kind of was what I know, the dreaded word, complementary football. And it felt better. That's the best way I can describe it.
Just keep in mind, Michigan State gave up 72 points over the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
Both games at home.
Yep. Yeah, I know, but something felt different here.
Okay. Well, I respect your take. I hope you're absolutely right. And I like Deacon tonight. I thought Deacon played just fine. I thought, I'm concerned about his lack of mobility with an offensive line that has struggled with pass protection these last couple of weeks. That's what I'm concerned about, I think, primarily. That'd be my biggest concern.
Now back to that missed pickup on that blitz, that corner blitz. I don't know if that was a safety blitz or a corner blitz that Washington Jr. didn't pick up. Terrell. He didn't pick that up. His head wasn't on a swivel. So some of these things that they have backs that need to pick up those blitzes, but for the most part, until Nick went down, now I don't know where Nick's elbow is at in the press conference. I don't know if he's out for an extended period of time, if he got a hyperextension. I don't know. It looked bad. But before he went down, I really liked it from left to right. Richmond, DeJong, Jones, and then it was Richmond, Feth, Jones, DeJong. They moved him from left guard to right guard, and then Dunker. That was the best they had it. I liked it set just like that. I thought they were going to bring in Stevens ahead of Colby, but after DeJong went down. But I don't know, what his status is. But so far of the year, that seemed to be the most cohesive group that they had that was able to get something done. But picking up those blitzes, they got to get those running backs, got to get more comfortable of reading where that stuff's coming at. So, and I don't know if that's maybe coach can respond to that, if that's the line, if that's the center that needs to call that out more. So they change how they have the blocking scheme at that point. I don't know how Iowa does it, but that's something I did notice they need to pick up a little bit on.
Well, I appreciate your call, B. I'm going to let you go, but I appreciate that, and we'll get Don's take on that. Thank you for the call, sir.
You got it. See you guys.
Don, any comments on that?
One quick comment, Corey. I think we forget. I appreciate the positive words about Deacon because I think he deserves a lot of positive words. But I think what's been lost in all this, Cade McNamara, 3 for 5 for 46 yards to start the game. And even in those few snaps, it was obvious that we had a different philosophy on offense. We were prepared to throw some high percentage passes, give Cade a chance to complete those, show more faith in our receivers' ability to run after the catch. And that stuff, it's unfortunate for Cade that he didn't have a chance to do that longer in the course of the game because the beneficiary of that same philosophy turned out to be the guy that replaced him. You know, Dean had that same benefit that Cade had. I think the average fan would say, wow, Cade was off to a really good start too. It's unfortunate that Cade got injured because he really had a good start. We drove right down the field. We stalled and had to kick a field goal, but at least we moved the ball down the field. And that same philosophy went forward even when Deacon came in. And I think overall Deacon took good advantage of those high percentage opportunities that he had. You know, one thing that's still frustrating, Corey, we only had one target out of 32 passes to a running back all night long. That's surprising because one of the simplest things you can do is swing a back behind the line of scrimmage, throw the ball to him, and block the receivers, block the defenders, of course, that are best positioned to make a play on him as he swings out of the backfield. We saw that any number of times out of Michigan State for decent yardage. So I don't know. I guess maybe we don't have the kind of faith in our backs that we would like to have for their ability to catch a football. Maybe that's something we can see in the weeks ahead.
Don, real quick for the DP haters out there, there are going to be some people that say, Don, you're never happy. You've been complaining about how Iowa can't get the ball to the receivers. They get the ball to the receivers, and now you're complaining about them not getting the ball to the backs.
Well, let's face it. I'd like for the ball to go to eligible receivers. I'd like for the blend to be. No, it doesn't have to be even, of course, but I'd like for all three groups, wideouts, tight ends, and backs. I'd like for all three groups to have good representation from one game to the next, because that makes us more difficult to defend if we're spreading the ball among all those position players.
All right. We are going to go to our next caller. Before we do that, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm. Appreciate Brad being a part of the show once again this year. If you want a great quote, if a quote on auto insurance, perhaps it's renter's insurance, even boat insurance, whatever the case may be, life insurance, give Brad and his team a call at 515-256-6480. Again, that's 515-256-6480, and learn about how they can help you protect your home, your family, your life. They've got 3 fully licensed team members to help you navigate through the complex world that is insurance. They're saving people tons of money right now. According to Brad, they've got rates lower than ever before with their auto insurance right now. So they're saving people great money. Visit them online at bradvanmeter.com or in person at 4229 Fleur Drive in Des Moines, Iowa. All right, let's go to our next caller. Leo is on hold. Leo, welcome.
Hey, guys. Hey, glad you got the win today. I ain't gonna lie, though, when I just caught toward the end, I was hoping you beat the brakes off MSU like Michigan did Nebraska over in Lincoln, but wishful thinking. Corey, I came in late and I saw Cade on the sideline. Did you say what the injury was to him?
We haven't gotten an official word from anybody. I was told that it was serious and possibly knee related. So we haven't gotten an official word. You know, he kind of went down, Don, very similar to how he went down during the Kids' Day scrimmage.
Right.
And you know, we were fortunate enough to get some video of that when it happened. I shouldn't say fortunate enough, but you know what I mean. We got a pretty good view of that injury back in August. But you made a good point. I don't know that just because he went down the same way, that definitely means it was quad related. When a guy is already hampered with injury and he's not full strength, he's more injury prone. And
Kids' Day, as you know, was his right leg. Tonight was the left leg.
Right. That's fair. Okay. I didn't notice. I didn't put those two things together, but you're absolutely right. Different leg.
That's too bad. Cade's such a good guy, you know.
A lot of Michigan fans have been hounding me over the last 2 weeks about how they warned me about Cade and how crappy a leader he is and all. It's amazing. I get them all the time, Leo.
Coach, I know, like, he was Cade not instrumental in turning our program around from the toilet bowl it was in for 2 decades.
I'm just telling you, it's every fan base. I get it, but it's just amazing the people that find their way over to this channel. I appreciate your perspective.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what they're talking about, because if Cade wasn't there, he wasn't instrumental. We couldn't ask for a better leader. We couldn't ask for somebody to get the locker room the way Cade got our locker room. There was a culture change, and he was at the head of that thing with Jim Harbaugh.
Real quick, I'm just gonna let people know that I'm gonna block John here. So John, I'm putting your comment up here. This is your 2 seconds of fame, because this is the kind of crap that I'm not going to tolerate in the chat. I'm glad he is out. He was horrible. What a stupid, naive, ignorant comment to make. And you might want to examine who you are, because that's a pretty naive, foolish thing to say. But anyways, you're going to get blocked in the chat. So you make comments like that. That's your one warning. But anyways, yeah, I feel bad for Cade, and I feel bad for everybody. He's been through so much injury-wise over the last 2 years. He missed part of fall camp due to the quad thing, and he's been injured throughout the first 4 games of this season. And now it sounds like he's got potentially another season-ending injury. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, he's a great guy, good leader. I'll tell you, sorry, Corey, but the guy who called before you, what are you talking about? He don't look nobody off. His IQ, he has a high quarterback IQ. That's why he doesn't turn the ball over. Now, he's getting pressured and he's injured. I understand he's maybe not to where he's supposed to be, but I seen Bacon play today. I mean, I saw a few throws, and I wasn't.
Did you just call him Bacon?
I did. I saw the thing up there, so I just started calling Bacon. But listen, I don't know. You know, I seen 3 people with different colored jerseys where he threw the ball. Didn't look like he looked anybody off. It looked like he threw in a double coverage. But I mean, that's just me. Maybe I'm.
I didn't notice personally. I didn't notice anything. Don, you're a former quarterbacks coach. I didn't notice anything with what. I mean, Cade has struggled at times this year, and he struggled against Western Michigan. He struggled last week against Penn State. I think it's fair to say a healthy Deacon Hill might be the equivalent to an unhealthy Cade McNamara. We don't know that, but I think it's unfair to assume that a guy that has been buried on both the Wisconsin and Iowa depth charts and who is going to transfer to Fordham in the offseason is better than a guy who led Michigan to a Big Ten title and college football playoff. I just think I don't agree with that take, but these are just completely subjective comments, I guess.
Deacon was the backup for a reason. It's because the coaches had more confidence in Cade, and rightfully so.
And it's not me ripping Deacon Hill. I hope he leads this team. I hope he's the next Cardale Jones, Leo. I hope he's the next Cardale.
Big boy. Yeah.
Big boy that led Ohio State to a national title.
He did.
So.
But anyway, guys, thank you. And I was just
thank you, Leo.
I seen him on the crutch. I said, I got to hear what happened. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's unfortunate, but.
We got Tom Kakert from HawkeyeReport.com waiting on hold here, so we'll get a word from him about Cade. Thanks, Leo. All right, folks. Appreciate everybody being here. Please hang tight. Stay on hold if you're here. I know we've got several people on the call line that have been waiting to jump on. We got people in the chat. Let's go now to our correspondent in Iowa City, Mr. Tom Kakert. I'm assuming you're still – are you still at Kinnick, Tom?
Yeah, we just got done with the press conference.
Okay, so, man, second straight week where it had to be kind of a, despite the win, kind of a sad presser given the circumstances. What can you share with us regarding the number one topic on the docket, and that's Cade McNamara's health?
Yeah, Cade, no official update from Kirk Ferentz after the game, other than to say that they'll know more on Tuesday, which tells me they're going to do an MRI on Sunday or Monday and wait for those results and then probably announce something. But I think the thing that was shared that kind of makes you think that it's more serious is that Cade's spirits, he said Cade's spirits were very down. So, given what he went through to come back this year, you can tell it's probably something pretty significant. I know the speculation is maybe an ACL, but we don't know for sure.
Don, you're a former quarterback coach and OC. I'm sure I know you've been through situations, maybe not identical to what Cade's dealing with, but how do you as a coach, how does Brian, how does Kirk in a situation like this keep his spirits high and keep it, regardless of what the prognosis is moving forward, keep him engaged and still an instrumental leader on this football team right now?
Well, that's why we're fortunate that Cade's the high quality person that he is, because he'll want to assume that role. He'll want to do everything he can to help the team. If he's not able to be on the field, obviously the best he can do is help us on the sideline, help us in the locker room, help us in the meeting room, help us on the practice field. He's going to do that, I'm sure. It's just terribly unfortunate. One year, Corey, we actually had 5 different quarterbacks that started for us. 5 quarterbacks injured in 1 year. And that was just a devastating year to try to get through. We actually had some amazingly good numbers, but it was simply because we had great skill players. The third or fourth or fifth back understood that his job was the ball to those guys that knew how to do with it. He could simply get it to them. We'd still have a productive offense. That's how it worked out at the time. I believe that was 93 or 94. Can't recall. I do recall.
Yeah. I remember that year.
Yards. Yeah, it was over 400 yards with 5 different quarterbacks. So makes you wonder if the starter could have stayed healthy, what would our average have been? I suspect it would have been a little bit higher.
Tom, Nick DeYoung also went down during the contest this evening, was replaced by Connor Cole. Did you get an update on Nick?
Yeah, it seems like he was okay. So doesn't seem like anything too serious. And Connor had gotten dinged up and did not start and was kind of an emergency guy. Did not practice until Friday this past week. So he's, I think, trending in the right direction. So I had like one of those the old school neck collars on the back. So it seems like maybe some neck issue of some sort that was bothering him. So the hope is that Connor could get back, and we'll see with Nick. But it doesn't sound like there was anything broken or anything like that with him. So I guess that's a positive, but boy, they're just, if you would have told me before the season that in game 4, you were going to be going with Beacon Hill as your starting quarterback and Amari Moulton's getting most of the carries at running back, I would have told you were probably crazy, but here we are, and they survived, and we're able to pick up a win. So, the positive is that those guys put together a winning performance for Iowa.
And you didn't even mention the fact that Luke Lachey is done, or at least appears to be done for the year. So,
yeah, he is done for the year. I actually talked to Luke today. He was up in the press box area, down at the other end of the press box area by the coach's box, and went down and said hello to him. And his spirits are very high. He was in the locker room with his teammates after the game, so I'm going down that tunnel to get with his teammates. So he's still an integral part of the team, but obviously, it's just they're holding it together right now, and an already challenged offense is losing weapon after weapon after weapon. And Kirk did mention at the end, it didn't sound great that Caleb Johnson and Jazzy Patterson are going to be back next week. It didn't sound like it was for sure. It was more probably not than for sure. So I'd say somewhere south of 50-50 for them, maybe 40-60 that they'll play next week. And that's probably better. That's probably the best odds is 40-60.
Any conversations during the press conference just about the turnover numbers? I mean, it just seems like Iowa's been, you'd be surprised with this given the fact that they've had a guy in Cade McNamara who's as seasoned and veteran as he is, but they've coughed up the ball a lot more than I don't have the numbers in front of me, but another, the fumble that turned into 6 points this evening. Deacon Hill had a pick. Just any comments on turnovers and ball security from Kirk?
Not really. He was pleased that they got some of those turnovers too, especially late to close the game out, and that they were able to make some plays and take advantage of some of those opportunities. But yeah, I think with Deacon, that's just going to be part of the process. He's a big arm. He's got a stronger arm than Cade does, for sure. And but I think he's also a risk taker. He was talking about the last time he played in an actual game was high school. That much, I shouldn't say. He played a little bit at the end of games this year, but where he's played that much was probably high school. And his senior year of high school, he only played 3 games because of COVID. So,
he hasn't played in a real game when the game's been in doubt in like 4 or 5 years.
Yes. And that was at the high school level, and it wasn't in front of 70,000 fans screaming for the head of your offensive coordinator. So, it's just that was that. I don't know how audible that was at home for you guys.
Clear as a bell. Clear as a bell.
It seemed like it was pretty clear as a bell that what they were expressing. Kirk did get asked about the 4th and 1 and kicking the field goal to tie rather than going for it. And he, I think if they hadn't taken that timeout or that break, he might have went for it. But then he said he walked down and he kind of saw how far it was, and it was a long yard, and he kind of said, you know what, I think we'll just take 3 and go from there. So it worked out. Cooper DeJean once again, just a magician. He's like coach. Is he like Tim Dwight sometimes?
Dwight's faster.
Yeah, Dwight is faster.
But at least he's got some of that same elusiveness, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I felt sorry for the punter. I mentioned Tom. He really punted well all night except for those last 2 punts. Had the shank, and that set us up for the field goal to tie the game. And then, of course, that last punt was a line drive compared to the others. The others had great hang time and great distance, but that one did not. And when Cooper fielded the ball, I think the nearest cover man was maybe 20 yards away.
Yeah.
And we had a guy engaged on him too. And Cooper got moved downhill in a hurry and did a nice job of running through 2 tackles. They both had a chance at him. That reminds me one thing. You remember the infamous Marv Cook play against Ohio State?
Yep.
These are tight ends rather than punt returners, but same principle. I was explaining to the tight ends, listen, you're not going to juke anybody out of their shoes anyway. So if you see 2 tacklers downfield, go ahead and adjust your path so that with a little bit of luck, they'll hit you at the same time. And that'll give you a chance. It's that same principle with the watermelon seed between your finger and your thumb. You just squirt right through there. That's what happened against Ohio State. Marv scored by just a matter of inches. And thankfully, he did a good job of adjusting through that seam and putting himself in a position where he got hit by both at the same time. That's better than get hit here and then hit here on the other side a split second later. You don't want that. That's how a ball is more likely to pop out too, is when you get hit twice in a short amount of time.
Tom, well, first of all, appreciate the super chat here from Brody, and there's a question here about Pat Fitzgerald. Can you talk a little bit about his appearance in Kinnick? That made its rounds this evening.
Yeah, that was interesting. One thing I was going to talk about the punter for a second too, because I talked to one of the Iowa assistants before the game down the field, and we're just chatting about stuff, and he goes, their punter's kind of different because he's got a large variance. He's either really good or he hits the shankopotamus. And we saw all of that today where he just bombed some over Cooper's head. And Cooper was beating himself up over those too, because he was like, I should have been able to field those, and I didn't. And ended up with short with on the back on the goal line. But then I think he hit that shank and then he just wanted to put a good foot on it, and he just hit a line drive on that last one. And instead of just going through his normal routine, and that's kind of that variance that you're talking about. He didn't want to shank another one, so he just hit a line drive and got a foot on it. But yeah, so I'm standing down on the field watching the recruits come in, and I look over and I see this guy coming down the stairs, and I see 2 kids with Loyola shirts on, and I'm like, that looks an awful bit like Pat Fitzgerald. And sure enough, when he came by, and I go, "Hey, Fitz," and he waves. So I knew it was him then because he confirmed it. So not that he's hard to misidentify or anything, but his son is a pretty good quarterback in the class of 2025. So they had invited him over for a visit, game visit for this game, and by all accounts, sounds like they looked like they were having a good time before the game. So, but honestly, I kind of suspect that Fitz is going to get a job somewhere next year. He'll be back in coaching, and that's where his boys will end up playing. So that's my guess. But still, it's kind of cool to see him at the game, and it was funny just seeing him. You could see him down the corner, and he was chatting up with Tom Izzo was here too. For some reason, no idea why, but Coach Izzo walked by me, and I don't know, maybe he's coaching football now too. And
He's up in Antonio, maybe.
Yeah, they're buddies. So maybe that was going on. And then so they were all joking around with Fran down in the corner. So it was like a coaches convention down there with all these old coaches, and some of them, at least one of them not working right now, but Fran and Izzo down there too. And so it was interesting. We'll see what happens with Fitz's kid, but I like I said, I expect Fitz is going to have a job next year. So,
Tom, final thing from me, and then we'll see if you have anything to add, Don. But Tom, just your take on this. I appreciate your expertise, not only because you get to talk to Kirk each week after these games, but just because you've covered this team for so long. What was the overall mood post game? Do you feel like the spirits were
much better than last week?
Well, I'm sure
much better than Tuesday, which was, I thought, kind of a dark day. I thought Kirk had his hands full this week because it seemed like things were getting a little rocky internally. It just by some of the things that Cade. I don't think Cade meant what he was saying to be interpreted the way it was, but I think it was more just, you're going to have to talk to the offensive coordinator about plays called, because he calls the plays, and it came off like he was kind of tossing Brian under the bus, but I don't think he meant to do that.
No.
And Nico making a few comments, but I do think there was some frustration, obviously, from the wide receivers, as there should have been, because they haven't got a ton of touches. And I thought it was very telling that they came out right away, 24 yards, 13 yards, or 23 yards, 14 yards. They were getting the ball to the receivers and moving the ball through the air a little bit more. And I think that's what they're going to do with Deacon, because, like I said, Deacon's got a big arm. You're going to have he's going to make some mistakes because he's learning. But, I think he moves better. He's a big dude, but he moves pretty well in the pocket, and it's got kind of I think a good feel for where the rush is coming from. So, Coach, you can speak to that.
I would honestly say the jury's still out. I haven't seen enough of him to make that bold a statement yet. I'll hope that that's the case.
Okay.
I think there are teams on our schedule that may do a better job of heating up the pocket than the Spartans did.
Yeah. Well,
I think there's probably one coming in 2 weeks, I would guess, up in Madison that will probably do that.
You guys may talked about it already, but I tell you what got my attention was the one-sided game involving Purdue and Illinois. I didn't expect that. And maybe it was kind of fluke the way the scoring went, but it was kind of interesting. The 4 games played today in the Big Ten, other than our game, I'm talking about conference opponents playing each other. All 4 of them were one-sided games. Average margin was 29.5 points. than the Big Ten was a year ago. You had a lot of one-score games. Today you had one. That would be ours. That's it. And well, ours one-score game either was. It's 10 points in the end, right? 26-16. But the others were, my gosh, 25, 27, 28, and 38 points. And one of those, of course, was Purdue on the north end of the score, and Illinois. I don't know what happened. It was played at Purdue, as you know.
Yeah.
But I really thought Illinois had a chance to pull it off. Go ahead, Corey.
My overarching thoughts here. Let me simplify this. I don't think Illinois is very good, Don.
Well, I didn't think Purdue was that good either, but apparently they're.
Yeah, I think. Well, yeah, I think that's fair. Purdue competed with Wisconsin for a while last week.
You're right.
Wisconsin was pretty good. Purdue got that win against Virginia Tech earlier this year. I don't think Illinois, Purdue, either of those teams are very good.
You heard me give a very positive opinion of Hudson Card. I think he's a good quarterback.
Yeah.
And he is an athlete. He can run.
He can move. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Well, Tom,
hey, we got. Hey, but the one other development we got the Sneakin' Deacon is now a thing.
Sneakin' Deacon. Okay.
Yes, that's what we're calling Sneakin' Deacon.
Does he have a nickname yet? Do you know if he? I don't know that anybody asked him that. Did anybody ask him that in the post-game show? I'm sure they didn't.
No, didn't ask him. Maybe we'll get that Tuesday if he's got a nickname. I always think of Don would probably know this because I'm dating myself a little bit. Like the Steely Dan song, Deacon Blues. So that's what I always think about.
Somebody put that in the chat. Yeah.
Here's an obvious question: is his given name Deacon, or is that a nickname?
It's his given name, I believe.
Given name.
Yeah. But isn't his real? Yeah. Isn't he? Maybe I'll make myself look like a fool here. Isn't his full name like Deacon Paya Hill?
It might be.
I was thinking because is his family from, or is his family Polynesian?
They might be.
I don't know. I'll have to look this up later. I was thinking he's got an interesting either middle name or part of the last name or part of a first name. I don't know. Anyways, Tom, it's late. Get back to the Quad Cities safely, and
thanks.
Hopefully be talking to you about a win over Purdue next week.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care, Tom. Be safe.
All right. I appreciate everybody being here. And Lemansky, appreciate the super chat. Greetings from Las Vegas. Had to check in on my favorite Hawkeyes. Thanks for the wisdom every week. Appreciate that. Lemansky, thank you for being here and your support. Tim the Tap Man, thank you for the super chat. Tim, and appreciate you being here listening to the show as always. Thank you. Want to give a big thanks to our sponsor, Iowa Smokehouse. I talked about Brad Van Meter earlier, but Iowa Smokehouse, not only are they supporting the show throughout the year, they're also the ones to thank for our call-in line. All of our callers that make this show run. We appreciate Iowa Smokehouse sponsoring the call-in show, the call-in line specifically. Use the code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com for 15% off your order. If you order enough, you'll get free shipping. So put in a $50 or more order, and it's great stuff. Maybe get yourself a box. Maybe get a gift for your dearly beloved, and they'll appreciate it. And next game day or whatever occasion, it's just great snacking, great stuff from Iowa Smokehouse. Visit iowasmokehouse.com. Following them on social media is also a perk. At Iowa Smokehouse on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And again, use that code Hawkeyes for 15% off your total order. And while we're talking about sponsors, Don, I think it's fair to throw up our RTI Threads player of the game. And I could have went a couple of different directions here because I thought there were several candidates. Drew Stevens would have been a candidate with that 53-yarder. He was perfect. And he actually made two on the final kick because there was the offensive procedural penalty that backed them up 5 yards. He made that kick twice.
Right.
And again, he made the 50-plus yard field goal. But how about this one? How about Y.A. Black? He would have been another candidate. I thought he played really well, got in the backfield, disrupted things, made a really impressive read on a screen play in the first half. I thought he was really good. Had at least one pass that he batted down, maybe played his best game of the year. But Cooper DeJean, man, two biggest plays of the game, 6 tackles, the big interception of the end zone. He tracked that ball better than the receiver did. And then the 70-yard punt return for a touchdown. And the commentators on NBC, Don, were talking about how much of a mistake it was for the Michigan State punter to kick to an area with that much space. Talk about you obviously understand you coached Timmy Dwight and you kind of understand what it takes to be a great punt returner. What does Cooper do well that helped him to take advantage of that kick?
Well, it all starts with a guy just being really, really reliable in fielding the ball. And you've heard me use the analogy for receivers too. If you're fielding punts, Corey, at 9% and somebody else is fielding at 97%, that's a big difference. Because that means for every 2 you drop, the other guy only drops 1. And of course, over a season, a drop punt. We saw the exception last week against Penn State. I'm curious, somebody probably has that information. I would be willing to bet you, Corey, if you muff a punt, my guess off the top of my head would be you lose possession of the ball probably 3/4 of the time. Because you got all those cover guys, of course, they're in position to recover that muff. But when you know it against Penn State, the ball caromed off of the punt returner and off of Cooper, and then the punt returner was lucky enough to get on it. So it all starts with Cooper being a really reliable fielder. He is that. He's pretty fearless. He's just good with the ball under his arm. You know, he's got deceptive speed. He's got really good vision. He tends to, to pick his way downfield really with a good sense of where to go next. Excuse me. And that's what makes him special, I think, compared to a lot of punt returners that spend too much time going sideways. You'll see those guys that give yardage, and they're dangerous runners, of course, but sometimes the punt's decent, and then they give yardage, and then the net punt's worth even more because they retreated and lost another 5 yards. Cooper doesn't do that. He usually makes them. He's got good judgment on whether to fair catch it or not. He knew for sure, I'm not fair catching this one because this one's going back. And I'm sure he had confidence at the very least he was going to return it for 10 or 15 yards, and with a little bit of luck, it would go to the house, and it did. And certainly made a difference in the game. I think it's only fair. They got one non-traditional touchdown tonight. So did we. So in that regard, the scoop and score was a wonderful play if you're a Michigan State fan, but it wasn't to be outdone by Cooper's. Was it 70 yards? Is that how long it was? 70-yard punt return.
Let's be clear. Although it will go down in the record or in the books as a scoop and score, it was more like a fumble that never really hit the ground. I mean, it was scoop midair.
Yeah.
And how freakish. Have you seen that happen before? I'm sure it's happened here.
It happens every now and again, but not very often, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was hard for me sitting in the seats, hard for me to even realize what happened. How did he end up with the ball?
Right.
Then when you see it, of course, the ball actually flies, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 yards before he possesses it, right? The ball's in the air for a while.
Yeah. And what's wild is that was a play after the Sebastian Castro interception.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
yeah, you're right.
Odd series, but I made the comment on Twitter during the game, Don. It was one of the most bizarre Iowa games I've seen. Just a lot of weird stuff happening, and obviously injuries being one.
Yeah, let's not forget Cooper's interception, too. Not hard to imagine that wouldn't have been a made field goal a down or two later. I don't know if that was third down. I can't recall. Maybe you're aware of what down it was. But I believe they're probably already in field goal range when they threw the ball on that play.
Oh, yeah.
Were they maybe in the 30 or so?
Well, given that the fact that their kicker made a 58-yarder, I would say they were in field goal range.
I didn't think he could do that. Now, the ball came out pretty low, of course. It's got to be a line drive to some degree to get it down that far downfield. And, of course, I'm sure we tried to block it, but we weren't able to be lucky enough to get our hands on it.
Don, that thing was good from 62.
That was an impressive kick. It really was. I told Lisa, I said, he's not going to make this. Because if I'm not mistaken, there's a little bit of wind in his face. At least I thought there was.
Was he going? What direction was he going? I can't remember.
He was putting to the south. Kicking to the south.
Absolutely. He was going into the wind.
Yeah. I know the play.
The wind died down as the game went on, correct?
Right. There wasn't much wind, but I think what little wind there was, I think was in his face.
Yeah. There was plenty of wind earlier today here in Iowa. So, and I noticed the very first kick of the game, which would have been a Michigan State kick, was kicked almost into the first row going north. And that told me, okay, we got a pretty strong wind coming from the south still.
Yeah, a lot of those kickoffs to the north end zone were beyond the end line.
Yeah. RTI threads, player of the game, Cooper DeJean, when they give him 6 tackles, an interception, and 70-yard punt return for a touchdown. That'd be the go-ahead touchdown, and Iowa, of course, would not look back. And I'm guessing that RTI Threads is going to be busy over the coming days because what a party they're going to be celebrating for their NIL athlete. Visit cd3lacesup.com for his official apparel. Maybe you get your Cooper DeJean golf balls or your polo, whatever the case may be. You can search through all his merch at cd3lacesup.com. I'll throw it up here on the banner, the main banner, so everybody sees it. And, of course, all their athletes, they've got Zach Lutmer, Carson Shire, Aiden Hall, all featured across their NIL roster, and that roster continues to grow. RTIthreads.com. And, again, one more time, for Cooper DeJean, cd3lacesup.com. We're happy to be pairing ourselves with RTI Threads and Cooper throughout the 2023 season. Don, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back. We've got a number of callers who are hoping to chat with you before the sun comes up. So I told everybody we are not going 4 hours tonight. I need to get to sleep. I need to get some shut-eye. You need to get to bed. I'm concerned about your health. We need you to be able to make it through the season, Don. So we're going to be back with more calls here. Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Stick right here, folks, and we'll be right back with more.
Imagine the Possibilities is dedicated to empowering people to reach individual achievement across the spectrum of life. We believe in creating lasting relationships, empowering people for success, and cultivating joy. Our team of passionate people work each day to serve our communities in ways that create a lasting impact. We believe in creating opportunities for people with disabilities to achieve goals, build skills, and celebrate all that's possible. If you want to learn more about us or join our exceptional team, visit us at imagineia.org.
All right, we're back here, Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line, and Scott is on hold. Scott, welcome to the show.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Good, Scott, how are you?
Listening to you guys for a while, but this is like the first time I'm calling in. I got a question for Coach Patterson regarding Beacon Hill. Last week you mentioned something about being a mobile quarterback. You don't have to necessarily get out of the pocket and run, but just navigating the pocket, being able to avoid pass rush. I thought Deacon did pretty well. And I guess just earlier you said that the jury's still out, and yeah, we'll have to wait and see until we played probably better defenses. But what did you think about how Deacon Hill could, at least I saw him be able to move around the pocket?
Well, you had a better vantage point than I did because I was just sitting 22 rows up in my section. So the beauty of TV, of course, is a lot of time the camera's operating from the end zone and you have an idea. And you are correct, Scott. Quarterbacks, I've always told quarterbacks, you have to see the field, you have to feel the rush. And it's not an easy thing to acquire, but over a period of time, you do have peripheral vision. Even though your eyes are downfield, you still have a sense for where the rush is. And I think in general, the more you experience it, the better you get at recognizing the rush. And even if you're not a runner at quarterback, just being able to slide left and right or slide forward when you feel a little heat off the edge, you can still sense that pressure off the edge and just slide forward, slide left, slide right. There's nothing magical about staying centered up in the pocket. You need to react to what happens.
I noticed a few times he even stepped into the pocket, like he came forward before throwing it.
Yeah, we refer to those climbing in the pocket, working back toward the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and also, Brian Ferentz' play calling wasn't great, but I noticed that because, the offensive line isn't wonderful, so it's not like you can, the quarterback has 5 seconds to sit there and wait for those deep routes. But I thought he did at least a better job stretching the field horizontally versus vertically. To get like Caleb, the wide receivers involved,
tonight, you saw a lot of nakeds. You saw us fake left and right a lot.
Yep.
And even though the ball wasn't thrown that far down the field, it's still not always a completed pass, but we completed any number. A lot of those tight end throws were nakeds that they caught and ran with, and modest yardage, but still we're just talking about moving the chains. That's really where it all starts, is grinding out first downs. And we did a pretty good job of that tonight. We had 15 first downs. That's a big improvement over last week. That's for sure.
Yeah. And also I liked, because I noticed between 2017 or with Nate Stanley as a quarterback, I noticed that we did have 3 levels of, we had the running backs involved. And I don't know, that could be like Akram Wadley doing his thing. I think he was kind of a game breaker. But you had the tight ends, the running backs, and the receivers. And I haven't seen that really this year or last year. And I wonder, like, how much influence did Ken O'Keefe have? Because, I mean, didn't he retire? The offense wasn't great under Nate Stanley, but it just seemed like it fell off a cliff.
Well, let's just remember Ken O'Keefe was here in 2021, and the offense was absolutely awful.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I couldn't remember when he might still have some involvement in the off.
I don't think he's doing much. I don't think he's doing a whole lot, Don.
Yeah.
I don't think so either.
But also, and then for Deacon Hill, notice like those really big quarterbacks that have those big arms. They just put a lot of heat on the ball, and I know that there were some comments about that. As a QB coach, I mean, how do you tell him how to take heat off the ball when you're only throwing it 10 to 12 yards? And like those drop passes, earlier say that those receivers have to catch them. But what percentage would you think is, Deacon Hill just like, hey, take some heat off of it?
Right. Well, the most obvious example would be slant routes. I've always said this: slant route is not about velocity; it's all about location.
Yep.
So the ball doesn't have to arrive in a quick amount of time. I mean, it's got to be thrown with pace, but more important than pace is having good location on your throw so that the receiver can catch it, have a chance actually to run out with the ball. So often you'll see a guy maybe it's a drive route where he's running hard across the field, or a slant route where the ball's thrown on his back shoulder. And you can imagine running at top speed and having to try to relocate your hands behind your shoulders. That's difficult. That's a difficult catch under any circumstance. And so location matters so much. And there are times for sure when it really trumps velocity. Velocity is important on some throws, no doubt about it. If you can get the ball in that seam in a hurry, it does matter. And of course, when safeties are playing half coverage in the back end, if that ball can hit that exposed part of that zone, obviously it's important to get the ball there in a hurry.
Yeah.
Because if it stays in the air too long, that safety's going to be able to make that play.
Yeah. So that's our catch-22. You don't want to put too much heat on it. Because like everyone compares like Nate Stanley to Ben Roethlisberger, but I'm all like Ben Roethlisberger's throwing it to 30-year-old NFL players who are paid to catch a ball, not to college kids. But on the second, you don't want it to be picked up. So I get it, but.
And one of my frustrations with Nate, and Corey remembers this too, and you may as well, Scott. There were times when, and I like Nate's a great person. One of my frustrations, though, is sometimes on deep throws, he would overthrow a receiver that was open deep. Yeah. And that's just heartbreaking when that happens, because in that circumstance, it's okay to actually be sure you don't overthrow, even to the point of him having to wait for the ball. If he has to wait for it, it's still going to be a big gainer. May not be a 70-yard touchdown, but it might be a 35-yard, 40-yard gainer, and at least you didn't overthrow him.
Yeah. And one last comment is I really like that fourth string running back, that Moulton kid.
Kamari Moulton.
Yeah. He seems he's a smaller back, but he
really
seems
small,
very slippery, and he hits those holes hard.
He puts his foot in the ground and he finds space. He's 5'9". He's a small guy.
Yeah. I don't know how heavy he is, probably like 180, but
yeah, he's small.
I watched a running back from Michigan today. It's not very tall. Now he's a lot stronger than our freshman running back. But Jamie Morris was short 2 years ago from Michigan, And the only advantage to a short back is it is more difficult for the defense to find the guy.
Yeah.
Because he's so much smaller than the blockers that are in front of him.
But he just seems very slippery. Like he could just kind of almost navigate the. Of course, if you move him up to RB, I mean, you probably won't, but he can't be running up the belly of the defense every play.
I do think in general.
So he's the type of guy I want him to almost get out wide, catch the ball, and get. He's the type of kid you want in space. But yeah, he just seems very. I'm impressed with him.
I believe our three backs today had 22 carries, I think, between them, 22 for 70 yards. And I would say as a group, I give credit to the backs. You certainly couldn't accuse them of being, what's the word I'm looking for? One word that comes to mind is half-stepping. Coach Fromm might say, I don't like that back. He was out there half-stepping, simply meaning he's not really attacking the line of scrimmage. I think in general our backs did that. Maybe you could argue that in doing so, maybe they didn't run with quite as much vision as they might have had if they'd have been a little more experienced, maybe. But at least you had to give them credit for hitting the line of scrimmage hard and trying to fight for yardage after contact. We simply didn't have a lot of room to run. The seams aren't very big sometimes.
Yeah.
And I didn't think those three running backs didn't lack for effort today. I thought they ran hard. Michigan State just did a pretty good job of defending our running game. Well, and obviously we can sustain blocks better than what we did.
Yeah, they kind of stacked the box to try to stop that run. But also, and then one concerns me is, Michigan State, I think, had 76 plays to our 59.
Yeah.
That needs to change. And what you said earlier.
It's because they can't run the ball. Can't move the chains. Can't run the ball.
I mean, I'm a diehard Hawkeye fan, but I also I love Brock Purdy. I'm a San Francisco 49ers fan because of George Kittle. Love Brock Purdy, and I know there's a lot of criticisms for him because he doesn't have that deep throw. But it reminds me of like Moneyball, where he doesn't have that deep threat, throw it 60 yards down the field. But what he does is he moves the chains by throwing, because I think they said between 10 and 20 yards, he's 80 with the 49ers, he's at 85% completion, being able to move the chains. And it's sort of like you just keep moving the chains, and eventually the more first downs you get, it's going to start adding up into points. Well, I
appreciate your call, Scott. Thank you for calling in.
Sorry, I'll let you go.
Thank you, sir.
I think Corey, the listener would be surprised if you ask an average fan how many first downs do you think are associated with an 80-yard drive. The average fan would tend to think it would require more first downs. The truth of it is, I bet the average 80-yard drive maybe only requires 5 first downs. Because there are times, of course, when you gain many more than just the necessary 10 yards to get a new set of downs. So I remember one time this is after retirement, I was down to watch Kansas State play. And I might have told you this story, but it's a good story because it relates to a little bit of controversy. And I can't remember the names of the two quarterbacks anymore. It's been about years ago. But I was down and Bill asked, I'm assuming that Lisa would rather be with Sharon upstairs, but I'm assuming you'd rather be on the field. And I said, well, if you wouldn't mind me being on the bench, I'd like to do that. So I was on the bench, but I was staying out of the way. And there was one guy on the sideline that's a big Kansas State fan, and he's the guy that plays Cameron on Modern Family. I can't think of his name right now. Wonderful actor that's a big fan. Anyway, long story short, the way the first half played out, it was against Texas, and they were behind something like 17-0 as the half wound down. And the funny part of it all is there was a little quarterback controversy. Coach Snyder wanted one quarterback, and the quarterback coach wanted another. Well, I'm pretty sure you know who won that argument. So Bill's guy started the game and struggled, And as the half wound down, it was 17-0. And I went over to the other quarterback. And I introduced myself, and I said, I used to coach quarterbacks at Iowa. Coach Snyder and I were old friends. I have one question for you. He said, what's that, Coach? And I said, do you have an idea of how to eat an elephant? And he looked at me like I had a chicken on my head. And he said, no, I don't know how to eat an elephant, Coach. And I said, well, remember this. You eat an elephant one bite at a time. The reason I'm telling you this is because I suspect you're going to start the second half. And all you can do with that opening possession, you can only score at best a touchdown. You can't make up that 17 points on this first drive of the second half. So just focus on making first downs. And before you know it, you'll be in the red zone. And at that point, you got a good chance to put the ball in the end zone. And if you do that twice, then if your defense holds up, then you got a chance to win the game in the second half. It might be the last possession, but you got a chance to get that done. Well, that's exactly how it played out. It was 17-14 late in the game. And now they're driving for what would be the winning touchdown. And the bad news, it'd be a great story if they scored, but they failed at the end of the game. Texas beat them. But the point is they had a chance to win the game, even though they were down by 17. You can't make all that up at once. You just got to focus on making first downs, converting in the red zone. And half a play lasts a long time. I used to tell that to guys sometimes, Corey, we got off some horrible starts. And I would always remind them, guys, relax. A football game lasts a long time. You're not going to panic mode. We got plenty of time to get this straightened out. All kinds of examples in the past. I remember one time we were playing Michigan State in Kinnick. I remember vividly, it was 17-0 at the end of the first quarter. And the sad thing, they had 17 points, and we made our first down on the last play of the first quarter. Well, you can imagine, Corey, our fans weren't very happy with us. Final score that day, Iowa 37, Michigan State 30. We reeled them in over those last three quarters. And it all started because we know how to eat an elephant, one bite at a time.
And Don, how important is it for this team to stay ahead of the chains? Because it seems like every time they fall behind, it's just almost impossible to catch up. I mean, especially without Cade now moving forward, how important is it for a backup like Deacon Hill to be able to generate something positive on first down?
Well, we've already identified, at best, you can give us a marginal grade for pass protection. Well, one way to help that, of course, is run play action on rundowns, or even play action on first down is not a bad option either, because most teams, of course, would like to run the ball on first down. I don't know what our percentage is right now, but I'm sure we're more run than pass on first down. The bottom line is that it is important to at least stay with the chains, if not ahead of the chains, because it gives you so many more play action opportunities. And not to mention, you're more vulnerable to a pass rush when those rushers can, lay their ears back and come at you with all their might, with their best possible pass rush. Another thing we can do that we haven't done much of, for whatever reason, is draw plays. You saw some draw plays. I saw some draw plays today that worked on extra long. Maybe not in our game. I get the games mixed up. I was watching so many games. But any number of times, I saw draw plays from 3rd and more than 10, and they worked. If you got a running back, and let's give some credit to number 5 tonight. That guy's a good back. He did run for over 100 yards against us. Incidentally, he transferred from UConn to Michigan State. I don't know how UConn lost him, but I'm sure they didn't want to lose him, because I'm sure he'd be UConn's best back too.
Couple things here, Don. Eric in the chat says nobody's mobile on one leg. Healthy Deacon is better than a broken Cade. Is that a fair assessment? I mean, would you say the jury is very much still out on that?
Well, I mean, if Cade's broken, if he's not available, then yeah.
I think he's talking about I think he's referring to the Cade that we were seeing weeks 1 through 4, who clearly was not healthy.
Well, you heard me make the comment. Cade, at less than 100%, reminds me more than what I'd want him to of Spencer. because neither one was that mobile. And I don't know yet. I haven't seen enough of Deacon to know that he's any more mobile than Spencer or than a wounded Cade. Maybe not. But if he has an idea for how to buy time in the pocket. I don't know that he's going to pull the ball down and run for 20. But he's not going to be much of a threat to ever get on the edge on nakeds. He needs to be able to throw the ball on nakeds, because if he has to exercise the run option, it's not likely to produce a lot of yards. Because pursuit would reel him in before he gained that many yards, I would think, in general.
Thank you for the super chat, Eric. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We've got Jerry on hold. Jerry, welcome. Whoa. Jerry's in the dark. Jerry, can you hear us?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Jerry. Good to see
As
you.
we used to say during the Army, I read you Lima Charlie. Lima Charlie means loud and clear.
I'm out on my porch, so
okay.
That's the deal. Got small children inside, so it's quieter out here.
Yeah, it is a quarter after midnight, so good on you.
Yeah, so, well, appreciate you guys, and I guess my thoughts are, that this was a culture win. The Iowa culture basically got this win done. But it's going to be a challenge the rest of the way, because you've got a lot of great cultures we're going to be coming up against. So looks like we're going to be having our second string quarterback leading the way. So I think that expectations have to be right sized according to that. We were, fortunate to get through this one with turnovers and so forth, like I said, with the culture, but at home, at night, and it's just going to be a challenge the rest of the way. But I think that Iowa fans, I'm one of them. Through many years, we want the best, but we're in a situation where, it's not going to change overnight. And I think that they're going to battle and they're going to do the best they can. But it's something that people shouldn't get despondent over if there's struggles along the way.
Yeah, they're going to be growing pains, Don.
Well, that's why it's so critical. We do a good job of not beating ourselves. And, we turned it over twice tonight, but at least there were 4 turnovers on their part.
Yeah.
That made a difference, of course. Yep. And again, our kicking game saved us because the punt return had so much to do with the outcome. And in the meantime, we're 4 for 4 on field goals and kickoffs out of the end zone. So all those things are good. And those do travel well. The right. Kicking game and the defense travels really well.
Yes.
Offense, maybe not so much. But we have an idea of the fact that we need to be sure to win on those intangibles, because maybe we're not going to be likely to outgain a lot of people on our schedule. That doesn't mean we can't find a way to win the game. But it all starts with winning on turnovers, winning on field position, having fewer penalties, all those things that we're pretty good at from one week to the next.
Anything else, Jerry?
No, that's good. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you, sir. You as well. Thank you for the call. And let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line, and we'll go to Alex, who's been on hold for a long, long time. Alex, welcome. Aren't you supposed to be getting married right now or something?
No, not coming. This coming Friday. So I was actually at the game. I was actually right on the 50-yard line, right next to. I mean, I could reach out and touch some of the players. I was that close, so that was pretty cool to see.
I thought you were going to say you were right next to your fiance.
No, she doesn't care for Iowa football. She lets me have all that fun. So
That's the important part, that she lets you have that fun. That's the important part.
very correct.
Hey, John.
So obviously I was at the game, and Don, you talked about Deacon, and what I saw. I mean, I'll actually go back and rewatch the network coverage of it. But he seemed like he was able to move in the pocket. I mean, it seemed like our playbook opened up a little bit more, and we got to Iowa's bread and butter, which is the QB sneak on 4th and 1. We haven't been able to, like, if you watch any of the other
real quick, you don't know what you're talking about. The bread and butter of Iowa football is punting.
Okay. I stand correct. Okay. I stand corrected. Okay. That maybe that's the side dish to Iowa football, is the QB sneak. But like, it was one of those things to where, like, when we got into those really short situations, like 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, with Cade under center, it was like, well, we can't run the QB sneak because he was, he's so injury prone. And I actually did see him in the second half. He came out, he was on crutches, and his left leg was pretty taped up with athletic tape, like just completely immobile. So there no cast on it. So I don't know what that says. I know I didn't listen to the post game, so it sounds pretty serious. And then Nick DeJean, he was actually on the sideline. He's close to me, and he just asked one of the staff who's refilling all the Powerade things, just like, hey, give me a bag of ice, and just stuck it underneath his arm. So hopefully that's just a little bit of a stinger there. But I heard a lot of people and read some of the comments about some of the play calling tonight. It did seem like play calling was a little better. It seemed like we tried to get the wide receivers more involved. It doesn't help that they dropped. Don, maybe you can say how many they dropped. Like 6 is what I counted when I was there. Like, just where it was on the numbers and they just dropped the ball.
Corey mentioned NBC had him for 6 drops.
Yeah. So here's my question then to you, Don, and Corey, you can obviously answer this. Is that just because of Deacon's a different quarterback? He throws with a different velocity. I don't think he's a different hand. I think he's still right-handed. But it's just like, is it timing? Is it velocity? Or is it sometimes you just, these are college kids, and it's just they're not NFL players. Is it just, do they have the dropsies?
Well, a lot of those receivers, of course, in practice from one week to the next, they end up catching more balls from Cade than they do Deacon. That all changes now. So they're going to have, every day in practice, they'll have more chances to get acclimated to Deacon for how he throws the ball versus Cade. I think that's important. Here's another, any setback, if you look at it from another angle, there's some kind of positive that can be found. One of the positives of Cade being injured is Marco is going to get more snaps. And that's in his development. Not put him out there with games in doubt, but with a little.
We're having problems with Don's signal here.
Damn.
I don't think Don's with us anymore.
Maybe not say that. That sounds kind of ominous. Don's just not connected.
I think Don is with us, but his signal was dropping off. Let's try to get Don. Are you back with us?
There we are.
What was my problem? You couldn't even understand me?
No, you were really like cutting in and out pretty hard.
Gotcha.
You're back now, though, Don.
So we were talking to you. The last thing that at least I heard was about Marco Linez getting some more reps in practice.
Exactly. Yeah, up until now, he's had mostly mental reps. I'm talking about since the game started. But now that changes, of course, because he gets reps with the twos. And so he'll get a lot of practice reps. And that'll put him in better position to play if and when he has to be out there.
Yeah. The couple things I had concerns with, and I don't know what was said, obviously, since I just got home from the game not that long ago, was the defensive line. It's from where I could see it. Now, again, it could be different from a different angle, obviously, or the network. It just seemed like the defensive line wasn't getting any pressure on the quarterback. I know Noah Kim's a little more mobile of a quarterback, and they did use him in some draw plays and some RPOs. But sometimes it just didn't seem like our defensive line was getting any pressure at all. I mean, I think we had 1 sack, if at all. So,
none.
Yeah, and that's an issue.
I recall the stats had Michigan State down for 1 sack, us for none.
Yeah.
There were certainly some pressures in there, of course.
Oh, obviously, yeah, but it's concerning because we were touted this, during, before the season started, like, this is a really deep defensive line. I know Noah Shannon not being able to participate hurts, but I didn't think it was like it would be that big of a deal. The other thing is that we had a lot of passing yards, but man, we had almost 79 rushing yards. It's
Not even 63, I believe.
Yeah, that's a concern. Where we got to be able to get ahead and be able to run down some clock.
You can say that all you want, Alex, but they can't run the football.
I know. I'm just saying that's a problem. That's what I'm saying.
But it's been this way. It's been this way since 2021. They couldn't run the football. 2022, they couldn't run the football. They can't run the football now. That's not changing.
I'm just saying that's a concern of mine with the fact of this Michigan State team now. And I did come on Thursday and it said Michigan State's pretty decent at run stopping, but I guess another concern was that this, maybe they were up for this game with everything that has happened. They wanted to prove hey, yeah, this whole thing with Mel Tucker is, obviously not good, but that's not a reflection on us. We're going to come out and really play hard. One of Michigan State's biggest weakness on defense was their cornerbacks. And it did seem like now, and obviously with Deacon Hill, some of his timing was off. Like there was one down, he was going north, I believe in the second quarter. He missed, I think it was Seth Anderson. He held him on the ball just a touch too long where he needed to get it out just a touch sooner. And I saw that a few more times throughout the game. So I think that'll get cleaned up. But it just seemed like most of the plays are wide receivers weren't getting separation. That's just what I could see from again, I was pretty close to the action. And obviously I don't have the ability to rewind a play and rewatch it. So, but I hope I should be able to catch the Purdue game. I don't know if we'll be able to call in. So I actually have one question for Corey and Don. Well, two. Corey, how long have you been married?
Wow. I figured this would be a football related question. A little over 4 years.
Don, yourself?
43 years.
So question for both of you is, obviously I'm getting married on Friday, this coming week on the 6th. What is, from each of you, I know this is a football thing, but what's a good lesson or a good thing you can teach a young person like me who's just getting married? What's one thing to keep a long, happy marriage from someone who's been married for 4 years and someone who's been married for over 30?
Well, I don't know. How can I possibly speak on that? We've got Don, who's been married for 43 years. Don, I'm going to let you take that one.
How about this? Always have it as your goal to be ahead of the chains with your wife.
I'll try to remember that, Don. I appreciate the words, and I hope we'll see what happens next week. We're flying out for our honeymoon on Saturday. The game's on at 2:30, right? 2:30 Purdue.
I'm not even sure.
I believe you're right. Mid-after. It's 2:30 or 3. I think it's 2:30.
Okay. So I may be able to catch the game. I don't think I'll be able to call in. If I do, we'll count. We'll see what happens. But I appreciate talking to you, gentlemen. Everyone needs to hit that like button. 4 hours last week. God forbid you have to do it this week. A lot of fans love this sport. A lot of fans love talking to you both. You guys give us a good outlet to vent frustration, celebrate wins, and everything like that. So I just wanted to say thank you, gentlemen, for everything that you guys do, and then obviously thanks for the teaching moment for a soon-to-be young married person.
Well, never take your wife for granted, that's for sure. I'm sure Corey would tell you that same thing, because with just a little bit of luck, she'll be your best friend for the rest of your life.
Things are right there. We're each other's best friends. So,
absolutely.
We wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you. Have a good night, gentlemen.
You as well, sir. All right. Appreciate Alex calling in as always. And let's see. We've got. Whoa. What's going on here? Ryan, you got issues. What's happening?
Ryan,
can you hear me?
Why are you on
Ryan
two?
and his evil twin, I believe.
That's on your end, Corey. That's on your end.
No, it's not on my end, Ryan. Why are you on two screens?
I have no idea, man.
Why listen, I don't know why you're doing what you're doing, but you're freaking a lot of people out. So
I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything different other than I don't have my headphones on.
are you on 2 devices right now?
No. No. StreamYard is a little crazy tonight. Anyway, I guess we'll have to deal with it. Let's congratulations, Alex. Can you
Hold
hear
on a
me?
second, Ryan. I can't have you on 2 screens. Hold on a second. We're gonna have to see if we can get this fixed here. Let's see if we can we'll boot one of these out from the studio. Hopefully this keeps him in the other one. Ryan, okay, there you go. Perfect.
All right.
I kicked your evil twin out.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hey, congratulations, Alex, and I'm going to get to football in a second, but as a guy who's married to a gorgeous woman for 20 years, let me tell you, it will change once the ring goes on the finger a little bit. But better yourself every day. That's really the key, in my opinion. On to football. Where do I start? To what degree do you think injuries could be an excuse for the lack of meeting the drive to 325? I'm curious what you guys think. You're down Caleb, you're down Jazz right now. They're going to come back, but Deacon, what do you I'm assuming Cade at best might come back for the bowl game, maybe not. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Don?
Well, next man in. The players understand. I used to always tell my backups on the team, if you're second team, your mentality that you play away. If you're third team, your mentality needs to do 2 plays away. You got to get yourself ready, and you have to understand, if I'm third team, I'm not going to get many reps at all. So I have to do a really good job with mental reps, and you know what I mean, Ryan, by mental reps. You're standing back watching the first and second team guys execute those plays, and you're having to envision that you're in their shoes. And you have to pay attention to the corrections that the coach makes with the starter, with the backup. Because if you're third team, who's to say that you're not going to be out there as a starter in another month? You never know. I mentioned earlier that we went through 5 quarterbacks one year. I should say we went through 4. The 5th guy.
I remember that year, Don. I remember that year.
That was a tough season.
Starter.
Tough season, but we didn't want to give anyone an excuse that we might not be able to move the ball. And truthfully, we averaged over 400 yards offense that entire season with 5 different quarterbacks. So it can be done.
You know what, Don? Excuse me, Coach Patterson. You know what's interesting about that? You just said you still got 400 yards offense. Well,
Right.
in the last 2 games, and we won 1 and lost 1, we have a total of 298 yards offense. 76 last week, 222 today. I mean, I'm sorry, but where is this going?
Why are you sorry? Why are you sorry, Ryan?
I don't want to be negative Nelly here, but we won. We won by 10. We probably should have won by 14-17, but you know what? We won. I don't want to be that guy who's bitching and whining when we won a game against a decent team. That being said,
well, first of all, I think Michigan State is probably one of the 3 worst teams in the conference.
That's so Iowa. That's so Iowa anymore, I mean, this is why I made the comment last week that as much as I want to win every game, I can't get too excited about going to Indy because you're going to play Penn State, Purdue, or Michigan, and you're going to get your ass absolutely tronched. We do not seem, and it's weird. My son and I were watching the game, and he's like, Dad, if I was your offensive coordinator and you were the head coach of Iowa, why would you de-emphasize the Iowa offense? And I said, I have no answer for you. It's like every time my kid asks me a question, I seem to have an answer for him, and I don't have an answer. Because Brian, I don't think Brian's the pure problem. I'm sorry, it's Kirk. It's Kirk. Greg Davis was maligned. Ken O'Keefe was maligned, even though he had 2002. And all I could do to keep my wife, who's a big Iowa fan, Northern Illinois grad, but an Iowa fan. She goes to games with me and everything else. She fell asleep during the game, and when Cooper DeJean had the punt return, she barely woke up. And it's like, yeah, we're boring. We're boring. And yet, I'll deal with boring the way Wisconsin fans can deal with their basketball team as long as they win. But, we're boring. And I'm like, you know what? I made the comment to my son, if Hayden Fry was here, he would never, ever tolerate 298 yards over 2 games. He would never tolerate that. And
Ryan,
yes,
I got it.
I'm happy we won.
Yep. No, I appreciate it. I got to move on, Ryan, but thank you for calling, sir. And
can you comment on that, though?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Don, can you comment on that real quick? Just as far as the pace of play and just the style. I mean, we've heard this for a long, long time, and it has been, we talk about common denominators. The offense has not been good throughout Kirk's tenure. There have been a few outliers, like 2002 being an example, where the offense has been proficient or above proficient, or above average, I should say. But for the most part, it's been below average, regardless of the coordinator. It has been historically bad over these last 3 years. We've discussed that at length.
Well, it's easy for me to say that the way the game was called today, I would rate it above each of the first 4 games, regardless of the yards. I thought we did a better job, and it all started with showing some confidence in our receivers, not being afraid to throw some short passes to them, and in the process of doing that, of course, you're asking them to make yards after the catch, and that helped us today because we started the game. I'm sure you remember well. We started the game by throwing the football. We started the game by hitting the first 3 passes, I believe, that Cade threw. Next thing you know, we're in field goal range. That was encouraging because it wasn't hard to imagine if Cade would have stayed healthy all day long that he would have executed that offense probably even better than Deacon did. And I think Deacon did okay with his limited experience, but I suspect that Cade would have done even better. I wish we had a chance to see what Cade would have done with 4 quarters of play, but it wasn't in the cards, so we move on. We have no choice but to move on. So I'm encouraged that we had some answers today on offense, and the simple observation is we got the receivers more involved, the wide receivers more involved in our pass offense. Next step, maybe, not hard to imagine, maybe you see an upgrade with our backs next week because our backs only had 1 target today. So the receivers were more involved, but the backs were not. And maybe that's the next step. Maybe we see that a week from now against Purdue. And maybe the challenge with the running game, here's our problem. And you've always heard people say this. They say, Wisconsin's a good example. They say in the old days, Wisconsin lined up with 2 tight ends and ran the football. 12 personnel, a lot of the time, 1 back and 2 tight. or maybe even 2 personnel, backs and tight ends. Imagine only 1 receiver out wide. That's what Wisconsin used to do. They were hypothesizing that the new offense, the new spread offense, would give the Wisconsin backs even more chance to run the football, simply because the box would be so much lighter because they have to disperse to defend those 4 wideouts or 3 wideouts, whatever the case might be. That may be true, but our fundamental problem, imagine if we're in, you know what 10 personnel is, Corey? 1 back, no tight ends, right? Imagine 4 wideouts. Maybe it's 3 by 1, maybe it's 2 by 2, but the box is, our blocking surface is simply tackle to tackle, 5 linemen, that's it, right? And I'm in the backfield, I'm in the gun, or I'm in direct, probably in the gun if it's 10 personnel, and I got that back sitting back there with me. Well, you might think on the surface, well, that's going to be a good run formation for us because we can get all the defense spread out. The only problem, I guarantee the box is never going to be lighter than 6 defenders, okay? And so the only way we can block them all is for the lineman to account for 5 and for the back in the backfield with the quarterback to block the 6th one, right? And the only other possibility would be some kind of zone read play where the quarterback has responsibility for the defensive end. And if we're not going to block him with our tackle, so if he closes hard, the quarterback has no choice but to pull the ball and run through the alley. I don't know that we're going to do that. And even short of that, even if there's 6 in the box, how are we going to get them blocked very effectively if the burden's going to come down to those 5 offensive linemen? We've already established it's not easy for 5 linemen to account for 5 defenders. That's what we're asking them to do, and we're having a hard time getting that done against the average defensive front. So that's a long discussion, but what I'm really saying, Corey, is different formations may not really solve our problem. But it still gets back to, can the 5 linemen account for 5 defenders? That's fundamentally what our problem is.
Bobby, appreciate the super chat. Appreciate you being here. And Patrick also with the super chat. He says, love the Corey and Don dynamic. Thank you, Patrick. The respect between the two of you is clear. Thanks for the great show. Appreciate that, Patrick, and for your support. And Bobby with another super chat. Thank you, Bobby. He says, Coach Patterson, what can be done with the Iowa route trees to free up receivers? We hardly ever see free runners in games, unlike other programs. Man, I couldn't agree with that more, Don. It just seems like offense comes so easy to so many programs, and yet year after year it comes so hard for this program. Explain that to the average fan. And is it route trees? Is that part of the problem?
Well, you're right about one thing. If you're simplistic with your routes, it gives the defense a little better chance to cover them. Sometimes the best routes are very non-traditional. I'll give you an example. We had a scheme that I was really proud of years ago, and we simply referred to the play. Kind of hard to describe, but let me describe it this way. Imagine a slot formation. You know what a slot formation is, Corey? I'm talking about 2-back offense. I'm talking about a fullback. You didn't see a fullback hardly at all today, did you? Maybe that means our Hayden Large was not healthy. Maybe, I don't know.
He was out there. He did play.
We had a few snaps, okay. But anyway, just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, and again, like you heard me say, if you look long and hard at all these game films and you continually ask the question, what if? What if we do this? What if we do that? And don't be afraid when you see somebody else do something well. It might not be on a college game. It might be from some NFL game tomorrow. That's okay. You've heard that expression, what's the word? It's, imitation is the greatest form of flattery, right? Don't be embarrassed by taking something that someone else did. University of Washington ran a really good concept, and I haven't seen it in the Big Ten yet. We're going to borrow that concept. We're going to run it because it's not hard for me to imagine if we line up in that formation, we're going to get a very similar alignment out of Purdue. Well, there's no way Purdue's going to be ready for us to run that play because they've never seen us run it. So getting back to a concept, I came up with one years ago, and this is hard to imagine. Imagine a formation with a tight end away from the slot. So you got two wide receivers on the right, let's say, a tight end on the left side, okay? Two backs in the backfield. Okay, play action pass, and the action we used to use was, let's face it, you got 5 linemen and you got 2 backs that also can be responsible for blocking somebody in the front, right? So you got no problem accounting for all 7 defenders that are in the box. True?
Okay.
Here's the concept. We're gonna fake as hard as we can with our line to, of course, slow down the pass rush a little bit, buy as much time as possible. And here's the pass concept that works so well. Imagine the slot, the inside receiver, the slot receiver, the guy inside. His job is to run what you might think of as a go route. His job is to collect that free safety, and the typical coverage is 3 deep against the slot formation. So you got that free safety downfield. Just imagine that slot receiver is going to run hard and deep through the slot side of the formation with that free safety in mind. The free safety has no but to carry that receiver deep downfield. He's going to turn his hips. We started in a slot right formation. Imagine he turns his hips toward that receiver because he's got to cover that guy on a deep route. What he didn't realize is that outside receiver is going to be going vertical for a while. And then after that free safety is locked onto that inside receiver, he's going to run deep and across the field. And it all started, the traditional route off the post concept with the inside receiver is a dig with the outside receiver. A dig is an in route. Okay? That's a good play. The only problem with that play is the free safety would come back down and tackle it, or maybe that backside corner would come back down and tackle it. I know I'm getting in the weeds, but let me just make the point. The concept was simply called Go TD. It would be called Z-Go XTD. Z-Go, you're carrying the free safety deep downfield. He's forced to open his hips toward you to defend deep downfield. Meanwhile, that outside receiver is not running a dig route. He's not parallel at 17 yards. He's angling across the field. He's catching the ball at 25 yards on the dead run. And what makes the play go so well is the tight end on the backside. He releases hard down the field, and the coaching point for him is you need to show that corner who's on your side of the field, defending the outside third, you need to show him big eyes. And you know this, Corey, if you're playing corner and I'm the tight end running at you with big eyes, you know what that means? That means I'm getting the ball. That's what that means. That's how important it is to run these routes exactly right. The big eyes tell the corner, I'm getting the football, and you better cover me. So that tight end releases down the field and breaks hard outside and looks for the ball and actually flashes his hands even because he wants to get that corner occupied with him. And now you got that big seam between that free safety and that corner, and we hit it with what we call a TD route. This is honest to God truth. We ran that the first year we ran that route. The only negative is it takes time to get the receiver down there. But we were averaging like 40 yards per attempt, if you can imagine. So if you can imagine, we ran it 8 times and it was worth over 300 yards. Think about that. What a concept. So maybe against some teams you wouldn't try it because you didn't think you could protect long enough. And that's why it was important to run it at the right time. Maybe the best chance you had would be 3rd and short, where they're not really thinking pass rush again. We're going to be able to buy enough time to be able to run that concept. But that was a concept that honestly, I never saw anybody run it up until that point in time. And I'm proud to say that because to my knowledge, we're the first ones that ran it. And yeah, it was a great play. And it had a lot to do with, obviously those are a lot of chunk plays. If you average 40 yards per attempt, we were something like 7 for 8 for 300 yards. I mean, that's pretty good. I think that's the only pass concept I ever saw that was worth more than 15 yards per attempt. 15 yards per attempt is good. My gosh, if you can average 15 yards every time you throw that concept, you need to keep calling it because they can't stop it.
Absolutely.
That was a long discussion, but I thought it might be worth doing. My point with all that, Corey, is you gotta really really use your imagination and figure out what can we do that we're not doing already. Is there a weapon we can give to our players that makes them even better than what they are? That's what coaches are paid to do.
Ryan, I can't throw this up on the screen, but I appreciate Ryan donating via PayPal. Thank you for that, Ryan. And he says, thanks for all you do. I think you should be Dolphins' successor. I appreciate that, Ryan. Let's see. I think we had this super chat already from Eric. Thank you for that super chat, Eric.
I'm sorry, Corey. There was no mention that I might be able to take Podolak's place, you're saying?
People have mentioned that in the past, Don. Don't worry. How much older is Eddie than you? Is Eddie older than you?
Yes, but I'm not sure how much. I'm 72. I think Eddie's probably in his late 70s, I think.
By the way, almost 1 a.m. We got 500 people still watching, Don. So how about that? Steve says chants are going to get louder if this continues. We lose big against Wisconsin and Purdue. Will Kirk be forced to deal with it before season's end? Kirk's not making staff changes before the end of the season. I think they could lose the rest of their games and he still wouldn't make a staff change. Now, I know you don't like those chants, Don. They were loud. There was also a somewhat...
what chants? I really couldn't hear any chants in my section.
The fire Brian chants?
No.
You didn't hear those?
No.
Oh, they were clearly audible on television.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, my section must be above average with the way they act. Of course,
you didn't hear those chants? Because
no.
Tom mentioned them earlier.
I couldn't pick them up.
Oh yeah, and then I don't know if you saw this, but it ended up becoming kind of a viral thing on social media. Did you see the? And again, I hope this isn't with all the different. Like over the last couple of weeks, these different things about AI, these videos that have been doctored. Did anybody see the Children's Hospital? Let's bring Tony into the mix. I see Tony nodding his head. Tony.
It was AI, Corey.
It was AI. Okay, thank goodness. Man, that was not going to be good. See, I was letting you go down that road.
What did I miss tonight?
It was like, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Let me see if I can find it here. Let's see here. What do they say after a certain time at night on television? Like anything goes on radio. So that's going to be how it is here. It's like we got 500 people on here. It's late. This show is, 2.5 hours in. Let me actually share my screen. Man, there's so much of that AI and the doctored stuff anymore, Tony.
I know you can't. I understand. It's just it doesn't make this fun. So in some aspects, it doesn't make it fun. That you can't really tell the difference between what's reality and what's not.
Yeah, you're right. By the way, did you see, Don, that Iowa State? This is a random thought. Iowa State gave up 40 points in the first half this evening to Oklahoma.
I noticed the first quarter, both started off putting points up. I think it was 20-17, maybe in the first. I remember, or maybe early second, and then the next thing I knew, OU had run out a pretty good lead. So I feel badly for Iowa State. You know that I have a great amount of respect for John Hayes, and their defense got burned today. So it looks like OU's back. I think it's not going to please the Big 12, but it looks like the showdown might be between OU and Texas, maybe twice. Maybe championship game and next week. I believe it's next weekend that they play in Dallas.
Yeah, that's what I thought I saw on Twitter.
Yeah,
that Red River shootouts next weekend.
Yeah, that's going to be really disappointing to some Big 12 fans if that is the championship game in December. Yeah. Certainly might be.
I wanted to offer my 2 cents of advice for Alex, since I am happily married for 5 years as well. Mike Leach has a great little video on, as we all know, Mike Leach gives great sound bites. Listen to his, few seconds on marriage. It's quite funny on YouTube. But anyways,
Real
Can I
quick before you
order
go on,
Go ahead.
I got the picture, Tony.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. No, don't go
Can I
ahead.
share
Go
the-
ahead.
let's-
Yeah.
let's share-
Go ahead. Yep, yeah, go ahead.
Don, here's
Sounds
the.
like a sleep.
Can you see that?
There. Yep, now it came in.
Where? Oh, over here?
Do you see what's happening here?
No, what is that?
I can't even. I hate Twitter. I hate Twitter so much.
It says Fire Brian right
is-
below Children's Hospital.
Oh, okay. Yeah. They commented on that?
No, don't you see what it says?
Yeah.
But
It's
that's
fake.
apparently fake. That's not. That was not. This is a doctored video, or doctored photo, according to Tony. This is not a real photo, but it looks legitimate. Like there's a Fire Brian sign up in the Children's Hospital. So that's what Tony's point is. We just don't know what to believe anymore, Don, because everything looks legitimate.
You're right. I certainly didn't notice that.
No,
Didn't exist, I guess. Only in somebody's mind. Huh?
did not exist. Anyways, go ahead, Tony. And by the way, I've been slacking on this. You did call our what?
Iowa Smokehouse calling line.
Thank you. Go ahead.
No problem. Speaking of meats that Iowa Smokehouse offers, can we get a Bacon Hill shirt, maybe sponsored by Iowa Smokehouse?
Oh, what? Oh, a Bacon Hill.
Bacon Hill.
Actually, it's a really good.
Like a little partnership between the two.
That's a really good idea. NIL. Ooh, I'm gonna have to think about that. I don't know that Deacon would embrace the Bacon Hill nickname like that. Wouldn't that be kind of insulting? Like, aren't people implying something there?
Well, I mean, people are proud of dad bod and stuff like that. So who knows? Maybe
dad bod.
I will say
I don't want our Iowa quarterbacks to have dad bods.
Understand.
Right, Don? You know what a dad bod is? Do you know what a dad bod is, Coach?
Rumor is I might have one now. I'm going to do my best to hide it, though.
I will say I will double down and keep going further and further out. I did say last week we will still not lose a regular season game. I will stand by my prediction. We will still not lose another regular season game.
That sounds good to me.
even with Deacon back there.
Yep.
Okay. Good.
Bacon. On this show we'll call
your choice, man.
Can we safely say that the little guy in the top right-hand corner that we're not going to meet 25 points per game? If we can safely say that, what would you set as a new over-under? I know you're not a gambling guy, but you understand lines and all that stuff. What would you set as a new over-under for our points per game, given the circumstances we are right now?
Probably like 21.
Okay.
Don?
I'm the eternal optimist. I'd like to somehow think we can do 25.
Oh.
It's going to be a struggle, I think.
We went into this game. We said one of the best opportunities to put up points is against Michigan State. They scored 26, and they needed to pick 6 to do it. Or I'm sorry, a kick 6 to do it.
Well, I mentioned we better hang 40 on Michigan State and Northwestern, and we didn't get that done, did we? No. It's going to be difficult. I'll say that. I don't want to worry about it. I just want to worry about finding a way to have one more point than Purdue.
Oh, yeah. And that's going to be. If we win the rest of the games, yeah. I was just using it as a conversation, piece. And I will close. I just got a question for Don, and then I'm done. Don, as a coach, you mentioned that you had that year. We had so many quarterbacks that you went through, or you lose a marquee player. What's the message to the team? Because does that affect morale, you would think, or how do you keep everyone, focused? I guess when I don't want to assume the worst, but I mean it sounds like it's not great with Cade, and assuming that's the case, not saying we know that is fact, obviously. if that is the case, what do you do as a coach to help keep morale up and keep everyone focused on the goal?
Well, one thing I've always done is relay stories to them that have actually happened in real to Iowa players. And I'll give you an example. Dana Hughes, when we were playing Wisconsin, when Dana was here, Dana became the all-time leading receiver at Iowa. I believe that was for career catches. Playing Wisconsin late in the season, Barry Alvarez was at the time. But on that same day, he broke the record for receptions. He also was injured. And into the game came a guy by the name of Anthony Dean. Anthony Dean, most 60,000 out of the 70,000 people didn't even know anything about Anthony Dean. After all, he was backing up the All Big Ten player. So here's what happened. Anthony Dean went in the game. He caught a couple of, first off, we had to beat Wisconsin by going, I think it was 24-23, as I recall. And I do know this, we had to go for 2 points a couple of 3 times in the game. I had 3 2-point plays available for the game. And so here we are, we're down by 7, as I recall. And we drive down the field and catches a couple of passes in 2-minute offense at the end of the game. Now we're down the goal line, and we're at 4th and goal at the 3-yard line. We take one of our timeouts, and Hayden says, "Tell Coach Patterson I need a play." And I gave Dave Triplett the play, and we ran the play, and it worked. We scored on 4th and goal at the 3. It was a pass, incidentally, to Anthony Dean for that touchdown that put us within 1. And then we went for 2. And so Coach Fry's next comment was, "Okay, I need a 2-point play." And my comment to Dave Triplett was, "Let him know we just ran the last of the 2-point plays on 4th and goal at the 3. How many 2-point plays do I need? I've already used 3. And just for the record, all 3 plays worked." And the response Dave mentioned to Coach Fry, Donnie says, "We're out of 2-point plays." Hayden said, "Well, he better find one in a hurry then, because we got to win this game right now." So I said, "Well, I don't know if it's going to be zone or man." I went with an all-purpose pass. It was 2-under, as we called it. The 2 tight ends ran pick routes. So if it's man coverage, you throw the ball to the tight end that's running underneath the other tight end. And if it's zone coverage, look on that end line, and behind him, back of the end zone, is Anthony Dean. It was zone. And who threw the ball? Jim Hurley, I believe. It was Jim Hurley. The ball went up to Anthony Dean for the 2-point play. That also worked. If you can imagine, he caught a couple of passes to keep the drive alive. He caught the touchdown, and he caught the 2-point play. And nobody knew who Anthony Dean was. Here's the message. Anthony Dean was ready. He was ready for that opportunity. He could not have been more ready. His teammates had confidence in him. The general public didn't know anything about him, but he was ready. And I also give him another story, and I don't think he would mind me sharing it with you right now, sharing it with our listeners, because we had a great linebacker from Ankeny by the name of Kevin Spitzig. Now, you'd have to be a pretty good Iowa fan to remember that. I think Kevin probably got all conference honors before he graduated, because he was a really good player. But here's the point. As a young player, we go to Indiana. Kevin Spitzig is on the trip as a freshman, and he's clearly playing in a backup role. And even as Kevin Spitzig told his teammates about it later, because these guys both got up, and specifically Kevin got up and talked to his teammates about that subject of being ready for the opportunity. And Kevin said, "I hate to tell this about myself, because it's an indictment of me, but I'm telling it because maybe it'll cause you to not make that mistake I did." Kevin's mistake was he was not prepared to go in. He was playing behind a really established player. That player was named George Davis, who's also a really outstanding, savvy linebacker. His nickname was Bulldog. That tells you something, because he played football like a Bulldog too. Anyway, George got injured. Kevin Spitzig got thrown in the game by Barry Alvarez, the linebacker coach. In the very first play, Babe Laufenberg was the quarterback. I still remember that, for Indiana. Babe Laufenberg drops back and throws the ball right between the 1 and the 6 that was on Kevin Spitzig's jersey number. And you have an idea what happened. The ball went off that jersey into the ground. And Kevin told his teammates that happened. He said, it wasn't that I didn't have good hands. It was simply that I wasn't even ready to be on the field. And I blew it. I should have made that play. That was a routine play. I didn't make it simply because I wasn't prepared to be out there. And as Kevin told it, I was admiring the cheerleaders and admiring the pom-pom girls. I was, listening to the band. I wasn't paying attention. And he was able to share with his teammates, don't make the mistake I made. And he also said, thank God that did not cost us the football game, because we went on to beat Indiana that day, despite Kevin not making that what he would describe as a routine play for a linebacker. Why did Kevin not make that play? Because he made all kinds of great plays over his career. He would tell you, I didn't make it because I wasn't ready to be out there. So that's a good message for all players. Even if you're third team, you're 2 plays away. If you're fourth team, you're 3 plays away. That's the mentality you have to have. You got to get yourself ready. Now, if you're fourth team, of course, you're on the scout team, and all you're able to do to get yourself ready to play is really concentrate on those weight workouts, make them all count, concentrate on all those fundamental periods when you are with your position coach, because when we go teamwork, of course, you're on the scout team impersonating the other team. So the point is, get yourself ready for that opportunity, because remember this expression, chance favors the prepared mind. You better have a prepared mind, because when you're thrown on the field to play, your best chance to execute is if you're prepared mentally and prepared as best you can physically. That's a long story, but I think it's worth telling, because that's what gives your second team players a little extra motivation to know that they might be thrown in the game when it matters the most. And nobody wants to disappoint their teammates or their fans or their coaches. And that's what good teammates do. They get themselves ready, even if they're only third team on the depth chart.
Thanks. I appreciate it. And I'll just close. I do have my Wave shirt on, Corey. You can't see it.
Good for you.
It's funny that we had the discussion about the AI with the Wave, and we can tie that together. But
absolutely.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. I appreciate the story, Don. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Corey, I'm sorry some of these stories are long, but to get the point across, you got to tell the story.
Steve says you need a whiteboard. Don,
don't have one. Don't have one. Sorry, Steve.
Okay.
You're right, though. I realize it's harder to understand if you don't know a little bit about football. It's hard to really understand descriptions of route combinations and things like that. That's difficult. I understand that.
Appreciate the super chat from BH. Talk wide receiver dropping X balls tonight. No looks, no wonder. What does that mean?
What he means by no looks, no wonder, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, lots of drops. Too many drops. I saw somebody in the chat critical of Caleb Brown. He's had very few targets. That was a terrible drop. I mean, it was a perfectly thrown ball to Caleb Brown. You got to catch that ball. But I mean, like I had someone reach out to me during the game. Well, now we know why Caleb Brown's not getting thrown to. He dropped 1 pass. Are we really going to sit back and give these offensive coach, no offense, Don, I know I'll make a comment about the offensive coaching staff. Are we really going to give the offensive coaching staff the benefit of the doubt on this? After all we've been through with skill position talent and wide receivers, the Charlie Jones thing, just we go down the list, I think there's more involved than the coaches had a feeling Caleb Brown was going to have a problem with drops. He's dropped 1 ball because he's been thrown to like less than 5 or 6 times this year. So then you get him the ball more. I said it's ridiculous that guys like Seth Anderson and Caleb Brown aren't getting targeted more, Don.
Well, the one thing we don't know, Corey, is exactly how it's playing out in practice. We don't know that. And that might be part of the problem. You've always heard me say catching at 92% is not nearly as good as 96, right? Because we judge the receivers by the ones they drop, not the ones they catch.
Right.
So one guy's dropping 4%, one guy's dropping twice as many. That's significant.
One of my bigger problems with people on this subject, and this goes not just into drops, but it's like this comment here in our chat. Not Brian Ferentz's fault when we have receivers dropping balls and running backs fumbling. I don't understand the very essence of that comment, but this is how a lot of fans feel. They see things like drops and they see things like fumbles and lack of execution, and they're like, well, yeah, you can complain about the coaching staff, but they're not the ones out there. It's like, is that not a reflection of the coaches? Is it not you were a former coach. If you've got a bunch of guys who are not protecting the ball, who are dropping the ball, who are not executing, who is that a reflection on? The individuals or the coaches?
Well, sometimes it is. You're right. I'll give you a simple example. A lot of guys, sometimes hand placement's incorrect. Just common sense, Corey. If you have a choice between catching a ball with your thumbs in or catching a ball with your thumbs out, what do you think might give you the better opportunity to catch one? Which catch is easier? A ball that's caught with your hands in or with your hands out? You follow me?
Hands
I'm
in.
sorry. Thumbs in, thumbs out. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thumbs in, thumbs out. Yep. Thumbs out's an easier catch. So if you have a chance to have your thumbs out, you're really kind of cradling the ball as it comes in. The issue here, imagine you're running a curl route and the ball's coming right at you. You know, you're squared up to the quarterback. The ball's coming right at you. It's being thrown below your chin, hopefully, because tip passes are balls that are thrown high. And we had some balls today that were up in the air a long time. Thank God one of them was almost intercepted, right? They ruled that the ball had correctly ruled the ball had hit the turf. But the point is, if you're throwing a curl route, you better keep the ball under the receiver's chin because that's a little harder catch. Just trust me on that, it is.
Okay.
And if you can't quite catch it, then maybe it goes off your chest and simply goes to the ground. If it's a high ball, of course, it's tipped, and that's in the air for a long time, and now it ends up in the hands of the defender. So sometimes it does relate to mechanics. Here's another simple example. Sometimes a receiver drops a ball simply because they made the assumption this ball controlled it in my hand. Matter of I've been confident in my ability to catch the ball. My eyes are no longer look all in. You've seen receivers that at the last second, they take their eyes and they come over here on the defender and look the ball in, and that's when, of course, they're more likely to drop. So you learn early on as a receiver, you got to look the ball in. You got to cushion the ball when you catch it. You don't stab at the ball. You cushion the ball, right? When it hits your hands, it's like throwing a ball into a net. You know, the net gives when the ball contacts, and when you cushion the ball, that's what you're doing. You're not attacking the ball with your hands out at the target. If anything, if you can cushion a little bit, in general, that makes it a little easier to catch rather than stabbing at the ball. Make sense? It really is. So my point is, there are techniques you can learn as a receiver that will enable you to boost that percentage that you have in catching a football. Obviously, another simple example, I saw a ball today that was thrown up for grabs. It was Northern Iowa versus Youngstown, but the receiver did a great job. The ball was up for grabs in the air a long time, but the DB waited for the ball to come down, did not attack the ball, did not high point the ball, and you know what happened? He's waiting for the ball. In the meantime, the Youngstown receiver high points the ball, and now it's a 40-yard gain for Youngstown simply because the defender didn't attack the ball. Good receivers know I have to high point the football. I have to catch it at its highest point because there's another guy that's trying to come down with the football too, and he's wearing the wrong jersey. So I got to do a better job of high pointing the ball than he does. Plain and simple. But that's how receivers can make you look good, and it won't be a surprise to you, Corey. If you're a quarterback that's working with these receivers all the time, if one receiver has great technique and is less likely to put the ball on the ground with a drop pass, then it's kind of human nature. If all else is even, I'm going to favor throwing the ball his way rather than throwing the ball to a guy that's a little more likely to drop it.
Want to take a quick break to thank our sponsor, Iowa Smokehouse. If you need a better quality snack, and who doesn't, for game day or any day of the week, any event, any get-together, whatever the case may be, check out what they have at iowasmokehouse.com. They're located right in the heart. Well, I shouldn't say. They're kind of south-central Iowa, down in the kind of Albia, Tumwa area. and they are serving great products and great products that go well with whether you're talking about your bourbon or maybe your Swarm beer. Whatever the case may be sure to check out their awesome products at iowasmokehouse.com. They are available in your local grocery stores as well and convenience stores, but you get a great deal using the code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com. Again, that's the code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com. And if you spend $50, you'll get free shipping. Also, Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm, be sure to give Brad and his team a chance to save you money on auto insurance, boat insurance, business insurance, whatever the case may be. Call them at 515-256-6480, online at www.bradvanmeter.com, or in person at 4229 Fleur Drive down in Des Moines. We'll be right back with more Iowa Postgame after this.
Imagine the Possibilities is dedicated to empowering people to reach individual achievement across the spectrum of life. We believe in creating lasting relationships, empowering people for success, and cultivating joy. Our team of passionate people work each day to serve our communities in ways that create a lasting impact. We believe in creating opportunities for people with disabilities to achieve goals, build skills, and celebrate all that's possible. If you want to learn more about us or join our exceptional team, visit us at imagineia.org.
All right, folks, we're heading to the closing stretch of our show with Coach John Patterson as we continue to recap Iowa's 26-16 victory over Michigan State on this Saturday. And, of course, we're early Sunday morning now. A few comments in the chat that we missed. Jared, appreciate the super chat. I'm late. Maybe this was covered, but Brian Ferentz doesn't trust Hill to throw on a 3rd and 7, and the next series puts him in empty on 1st and 10. Explain it. He wants you to he wants you to explain it, Don.
I really can't explain it very well.
So a couple things real quick. I do have some notes. Thank you for the super chat, Jared. I do have a couple notes here, Don. This is something that we used to do, and I need to make a habit of it more this year, but it was something that I know you and I did last year. I take notes during the game, and I like to kind of share those notes. I haven't really done that with you this year yet, so let me share a couple of these. First of all, we had a first on the first drive of the game. I couldn't help but notice with Cade McNamara still in the game, they had a 2nd down and 1, a waste down. What'd they do?
Let me guess. They ran the ball.
Ran the ball the middle. Point score for Don. Also, it seems like Iowa's been burning more timeouts in the first half for, I don't know if they're formational issues, or have you noticed the same thing, Don?
I thought we only called one tonight. Was it only one?
One tonight, but when that happened, I wrote it down because it just seems like we've had more of those.
That's one of my pet peeves, of course, because you never know when you're going to need all 3 of them at the end of either half. And so you really, I know how Hayden felt. The defense better not even think about calling a timeout because Hayden wanted all those timeouts to be available at the end of each half. And it was very unusual for us to take a timeout anytime short of that. If we were taking one to avoid delay, then we were going to be in trouble as coaches for that to happen because it simply shouldn't happen. That was his mentality. So, yeah, we only had one tonight, but even one, one's a concern because you never know when you might need that one more timeout.
Bobby says, Coach Patterson, what can be – okay, we already talked about that. The route trees. Thank you for that, Bobby. Comment here from Alex. He says, Coach P, it's beef number 55. Great to see you. Go Hawks. Who's beef number 55, Don?
Mike Ferroni. His nickname was Beefaroni, of course.
Why is his name Alex on the –
Alex Self. Wait a minute. Beef number 55, Alex.
Maybe that's just his alias. Maybe Alex is just his alias.
I'm thinking of Mike Ferroni. Number 55, Joe Lavellis was number 55 way back in time.
No, I'm guessing that Alex is just his alias on here, Don.
Alex, let me think. I'm not sure who Alex is. Alex, I apologize.
It's Beef Ferroni.
It is?
Well, he says it's beef. He commented it's beef, number 55.
Well, that's a guy that had the nickname Beef, the one I remembered.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he wasn't 55. I'm not sure if it's jersey number. Alex F. I give up. I'm not sure. Please clarify, Alex.
Eric says our fans booed injured Michigan State players near the end of the game. Some history there casual fans might not be aware of. Corey, are we the baddies? I think the boos, and I'm not defending the boos, but I think the boos were more so those two injured players went down prior to a very short fourth and feet. And I think the feeling from fans is they've seen that too many times, and it's not a good habit to boo. But isn't that the kind of the feeling that you got that fans were kind of thinking, oh, this is an opportunity to get up to the line and snap the ball and get this first down, and instead we got two injured Michigan State guys, one of which was shown on the broadcast just walking off.
Really? I remember the play you're talking about. I can honestly say the only game in recent history that I can remember where I felt the other team was actually doing that was the infamous Penn State game a couple of years ago. I am convinced that they were doing it. I think there was even a word or two that activated it, right? We heard that from – didn't you hear that from some source that was out on the field? I can't remember who it was.
Yeah. I think that was Kirk's son-in-law, Tyler Barnes, who used to work for James Franklin.
Turtle was one of the words they used.
Yeah.
I forget the other one.
Don Diewiak in the chat. He says, wouldn't you compare Hill to Stanley from 17? I feel like Brian could go back to his notes when he used Stanley to find immediate success.
Well, you get an entirely different group of receivers, an entirely different group of blockers up front. But you bring up a good point. Wouldn't that be a good start point at least to maybe examine what are we not doing that we've done in the past that we can actually revisit? I think that's a good idea, sure. Coaches would tell you if it's a good concept, we're not going to forget it. But there is some truth to what you're saying. If Deacon's skill set is similar to Nate Stanley, then doesn't it make some sense to go back and maybe revisit some of those games? Or at least not necessarily the video, but just the call sheets. Is there something we're overlooking that we've done in the past that was ideal for Nate, and we could also see that it would be ideal for Deacon? That's a good thought.
I don't. Tacoon says fans were booing the ball placement from the refs, not the players. I don't. Weggy Ocean, Iowa fans always boo players. No class from a team that hasn't won anything. The fact that Weggy Ocean, who's obviously not an Iowa fan, is up at 1:30 in the morning Iowa time watching a show about a team he doesn't care about, Don, is sort of sad. Anyways, let's go back to our super chats. Lemansky, and by the way, for people, I mean, we've got, again, thousands of comments in the chat during the postgame show, and appreciate everybody spreading the word on the postgame show and making the show more popular. As the show gets more popular, I frankly just can't get to all the comments. So the super chats are shown right away on the side of my screen. So I see all the super chats. It may not show up on your screen right away, but if you have a question specifically or a comment that you definitely want discussed on the show, super chat will do it. I can't guarantee your comment if it's not a super chat that it'll get up here, but appreciate everybody who is willing to throw up a super chat. Lemansky says, wife or significant other advice, unexpected gift for her at an unexpected time. I got great mileage out of simple Twizzlers. And I believe, Don, you're a big fan of those little pecan pies that they sell at the local Wally World, right? So it's the simple things in life, right, Don?
Absolutely. Give them a try. Pecan tarts, they're called.
Pecan tarts. Excuse me. Thank you, Lemansky. By the way, I like those too, just for the pecan tarts. Corey, please discuss the O-line. Running back missed block, 1 sack for Michigan State.
Well, I believe that was our freshman back that was in the game. And it's not hard to imagine if they show you a secondary stunt, meaning a defensive back coming that's not supposed to come, they kind of lull you to sleep because maybe that's the only time they brought him the entire night. and he did get home. It was simply an assignment error by our back. Unfortunate, because that was our one sack that we gave up, and I think it came at a bad time. Well, come to think of it, we hit the field goal anyway, didn't we? Because I was afraid we were out of field goal range, but we our Drew took us off the hook there. We hit the field goal anyway.
It was actually good. People don't need to know this, Don, but it's actually good that he got sacked, because I gave you a weird stat a week or two ago that Drew has actually struggled in his career between 42 and 48 yards, and yet he's perfect from 50 plus and perfect from inside 40. And that stat has held true.
I do remember he very seldom missed, but in general, the higher percentage of misses was 40 to 49 maybe than 50 and beyond.
Okay. BH, appreciate you becoming a YouTube member, dude. Appreciate that. And Corey, I don't want to skip Corey's comment from earlier. Just the O-line in general, Don. Did you see improvement in pass pro today?
Well, maybe. We played all day with one sack, so that sounds pretty good. I don't remember our quarterbacks. I don't know how many official pressures there were, or quarterback hurries, whatever term you use. But I don't remember too many. I don't think we had to throw too many footballs away, did we? I give Brian some of that credit, though, because I don't think we stood back there and held the ball a long time. We got the ball out a little bit quicker, shorter throws, and that gave us a chance to catch it and run with it. And that was smart football, because it eliminated a lot of sacks that otherwise might have happened. I don't know. Maybe our guys protected better. I don't know. I'm not sure. Seemed like in general we worked at getting the ball out a little bit quicker.
How about Cooper DeJean at Wildcat? We've talked about this before, but I saw several people brought it up. Now with the injury to Cade, I mean, it did get discussed in the offseason. There was talk about potential packages and situational things where you could use Cooper, not in victory formation, but in other situations. Don, I see some people in here. I mean, this is an interesting comment from earlier. Cooper is a perfect two-way player option for Iowa. Put him in the backfield out wide. Find a way to use your best athlete on the field. It's just not something that traditionally Kirk has ever pursued with some of his better athletes.
Let's not forget that through 5 games, our defense has been on the field considerably more than our offense. So Cooper already is handling all those defensive snaps and handling all the punts and covering punts, right? He does that too. So we got to be careful that we don't ask him to do too much. And I think that would be...
You're okay with them looking at mixing him in on offense, correct?
Yes. Now, if it's an issue, if it's going to involve a lot of learning on his part, that could be a problem. We did talk about Corey simply using him as a decoy, because let's face it, if you're playing defense and Cooper's on the field, you're making the assumption that Cooper's going to end up with the ball. So it'd be really easy to make him a really effective decoy. That'd be another option we could have, and that obviously would not take a lot of practice time.
Bobby, appreciate the super chat. He says, Coach John, can you explain how Hayden was able to run and throw the ball so well in a time of Bo and Earl with limited recruiting compared to the big two?
Well, it all centered on giving the guys a lot of tools to work with, and by that I mean just a lot of different concepts that might work. Even back then, I think it's safe to say we had a bigger playlist for any game than the average team. And we simply wanted to not run out of ideas about how to beat the other team. So lots of plays. I don't think we ever played a game, Corey, that we didn't install something that we hadn't done before just because of this particular opponent. And obviously, we wouldn't have gone to the trouble of installing it if we didn't have a lot of confidence it was going to work. Now, maybe it wasn't an original idea on our part. Maybe it was simply video that we'd seen way back in time even against that same defense. Maybe we're playing game 9 and we're going back and looking at game 2, something that happened in a non-conference game. Well, the truth of it is it worked. It's kind of hard to imagine why Why hadn't either opponent 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8? Why haven't any of those teams run that same concept? Because nobody else has even bothered to check to see if they've solved it, if they've corrected their problem. Is it any wonder that we might take something from game 2 and install it for game 9, knowing that nobody's done it to them? Well, is it hard for you to imagine, Corey, that same thing that burned them in game 2 has got a great chance to burn them again in game 9 because they haven't practiced it, they haven't worked on it? It doesn't have to be that extreme even. It might be something in game 5 that we do in game 9. But the point is, be really thorough with your game planning and be able to draw from different sources to come up with the best possible plan. That's what good coaches do. I learned that from Hayden Fry, and I also learned it from Bill Snyder. Let's not forget that Bill Snyder was also a great coach. The turnaround at K-State, not once but twice, a lot of people would say that's the greatest coaching job in the history of college football.
Let's see here. A couple more here. BH with Super Chat. Why hasn't Iowa been running deep slant very often this year? Does anyone else remember even one slant being completed this year? Maybe one. Well, they did tonight, right? There was a slant
We
to
had some slants.
Seth Anderson, right? Wasn't his one reception? He had one reception, or did he have 2 receptions tonight? Let me find the numbers here.
I think they threw more slants than we did, but we ran some slants. I don't know how many, but
yeah, Seth's one catch tonight was just on a slant for 11 yards.
Yeah,
but it's a kind of a bread and butter pass play for a team that might be struggling to complete passes down the field that can kind of get people in rhythm. And I mean, I don't know if that's something that you would look at for this Iowa offense of integrating more. Or do you feel like they run plenty of slants?
I would imagine they could run more than what they do. I don't know that. Slants are really designed. One of the things I've always liked about slants, you always heard me say, Corey, if you give the receiver a chance to run after the catch, that's a good thing. Slants, of course, give you that option. Deeper slant routes are what we refer to as bang routes. Those are also good. They're simply deeper down the field. So a slant maybe is caught at 8 yards. A bang route might be caught at 12 yards or 15 yards. We don't throw bangs, I don't believe. Bangs are typically thrown against 3-deep coverage. And the tricky part about throwing bang routes, you got to be play action to tie up the linebackers. And then beyond that, you got to do a good job of looking that free safety off. If you know pre-snap you want to throw the bang route to the right, you got to be sure to look that free safety off to your left so that there's a bigger gap to the bang route to your right. You got to try to keep that hard hit off that receiver, of course. You don't want the guy to get blown up. The whole idea of keeping receivers healthy is not leading them into a defender that might make them pay. We don't want that.
Bobby says, go ahead, Don.
I was simply going to state, Corey, the mark of a great quarterback is at the end of the game, you can't even remember that he ever hung out any receivers to dry. He never threw the ball so that they got pasted. Think about that. That's what the great quarterbacks do. You very seldom see great quarterbacks put the receiver in a really bad position. Does that make sense?
Bobby says, let's start a Coach Don NIL. So there you go, Don. Bobby wants to create a name, image, and likeness for yourself. And I had to laugh at this, Don. Steve, you may not think this is funny. I think it's funny. Steve says, is it true the Dead Sea Scrolls contain Kirk Ferentz's playbook? that's
also a biblical scholar, I see.
Rumors of the Dead Sea Scrolls containing Kirk Ferentz's playbook. So BH in the chat.
I thought Steve was going to suggest that the original playbook was carved into some wood or something.
Yeah. On the original tablet. So BH says, thanks, guys, in the wide receiver talk. I think you both touched on it a little bit. What do you think about the bootleg being much more effective, in my opinion, with Deacon? I think it's an A+ for the offense.
Well, The only problem, let's go back to wide middle screen. Remember that one? We actually wore it out to the point where it wouldn't work anymore. Remember the Penn State game where we tried to throw, I don't know, more than a couple of them. They haven't worked yet. So the point is, you can wear out naked too. Let's not forget. You remember how Ricky Stanzi got injured against Northwestern? It was one too many nakeds.
Right.
We were throwing naked out of our end zone. And here's a shocker. The guy's up the field and playing the naked. Well, it didn't work. And Ricky Stanzi gets injured. I don't remember if it was incomplete or intercepted. I can't recall, but I do recall that Stanzi got injured. So you got to be careful. Don't make the assumption it's going to be a great play for Deacon, because it's all predicated on the defense not defending that play. And so when you're running, that's why it's so important when you're running outside zone one way, you carry out your fake the other way, because you need to be checking to see if they're playing the naked. If they're not playing the naked, call the naked. If they're playing it, obviously you don't call it.
Typically,
it's not guesswork. You're actually looking at the defense, knowing what to call next.
Right. Okay, there was a super chat here from Takoon. He says, Coach, is Kirk retiring the key to finally moving in the right direction for the offense? We can't continue to operate like this under this scheme.
Retiring the key. I'm not sure what.
He's saying is the key for Iowa's offense to move forward Kirk retiring.
Oh, I got it. Is that the key to finally moving in the right direction? Well, I think we moved in the right direction tonight from a week ago. So I'm encouraged with that. I mean, the longest trip starts off with the first step, right? The first, second, and third steps. So we moved in the right direction tonight. I'd like to believe a good goal for next week would be involve the backs more in our pass offense, because up until now in 5 games, I haven't thrown very much to the backs, right? Maybe that's an idea for next week. We'll see. Maybe that happens in the Wisconsin week. But the bottom line is we got to go forward by finding ways to make our offense new and improved. And that means in some cases just cleaning up our mistakes. But beyond that, maybe showing imagination, just having one new concept. Chuck Long mentioned, I heard Chuck talking about it the other day. This is when he was at Oklahoma. And I forget who the coach was. I know who it was. It was Kevin Wilson. Kevin Wilson, who I have a lot of respect for. He used to be the head coach in Indiana. Most people would tell you he was an excellent play caller. And Kevin Wilson, at the time, he came in, and this is when OU was really good. They won the national title when Chuck was there, right? And Chuck told the story. Kevin Wilson comes in, and he says to the head coach, who was Bobby Stoops, he says, "Hey, Bob, we got to put in this play. I saw it on TV on the weekend. I think it was an NFL game. It was a draw play, some kind of slightly different draw play. We got to put it in." They were getting ready to play Texas, incidentally, OU Texas. Now, according to Chuck, that one play was worth 150 yards offense against Texas. Now, I don't know that because I wasn't there, but that's what Chuck said, and I don't have any reason to doubt Chuck. But even if the numbers are a little bit off, the point is well taken. Sometimes you see something and you're thinking, we could do that. So why not install it? Why not give it a chance to work? Let's face it. In a football game, some plays do not work. So what's wrong with trying one that maybe no one has seen that you feel might work? Corey, you heard me tell the story about Hayden asking me one time, "You got any regrets?" We were getting ready to play Indiana. I said, "I got one regret, Coach." He said, "What's that?" I said, "We should have this particular play in." He said, "Draw it up on the board." This is Friday afternoon. I'm scripting for the walkthrough. I draw it up on the board, and he said, "Well, can't we walk through it today?" And I said, "Yeah, Coach, but we haven't practiced it yet." And he said, "Well, if you're confident the players know what to do, we may run it anyway." The next day against Indiana, it went for 55 yards. We never practiced at full speed. That may sound crazy, but Coach Fry thought outside the box. And if it was such a good idea, even if we hadn't practiced it, we still had the element of surprise. I got to believe if we know what we're doing, we know how to throw and catch. That's not a problem. It was our best play the next day. So that would suggest that practice might be overrated at that point, I guess, if you make plays work that you never even practiced. But that's kind of an exception to the rule. We did walk through it a lot to be sure we knew what to do.
Hawkeye fan in New Zealand, appreciate you tuning in. Always good to hear from our Hawkeye fans across the world. And Connor says Deacon Hill, greater than Cade McNamara. Deacon Hill is a cruise ship with a cannon and legs, Don. He's the next big Ben Roethlisberger.
And let me issue a cautionary note. Fans mean well, but fans tend to overreact in positive and negative ways.
Yeah, I think so.
Remember that we ran the ball really well against Western Michigan. And some people thought that's going to happen next week against Penn State. Doesn't work that way. And your magic word, Corey, is context. You always reminding us we got to consider context.
And context is important in Michigan State because they're not very good. Spaceboy74, where has Weegan been on the receiver reverse? I'm sure the coaching staff would say it's been based on personnel and, the team they're playing. I would like to see them get a guy who's speedy like Weegan involved more. Midwest Boys podcast. If you're Cade, you get a medical waiver. Do you think he'll come back? Maybe. I don't know. I would guess so. Probably.
I would think so too.
Grant doesn't believe that Tim Dwight was faster than Cooper because Cooper runs a 4.3.
Tim Dwight ran a 10.14 100 meters. He was the Big Ten champion in the 100 meters. Yeah, I can promise you that Tim Dwight's even faster than Cooper.
Well, guess what, Don? Cooper runs a 4.3. So what are you going to do about it?
The only problem is Grant was the one timing it.
That's probably true. Grant, we love you. Thank you for being here. Brandon says, Coach, would you agree that Iowa's offensive line has went downhill since Chris Doyle departure? The Chris Doyle departure.
I don't know that it's that simple a correlation. I can see where you might think that. It seems like we were a little more dominant with our running game back in those days than what we've been here more recent years. I have heard a lot of I've said this on the show. I've heard a lot of players that had long and productive careers in the NFL to specifically thank Chris Doyle for the success they had beyond college. And I don't doubt that some years in the future, our strength and conditioning staff will get that same kind of credit years from now than what Chris Doyle got back in time.
EA Monterey, is there a quarterback competition between Hill and Labus? I would like to think there's always a quarterback competition back there, but right now it appears that Hill is the clear number 2, or in this case, the number 1.
And I did make the mistake of talking about our freshmen getting more reps. I really spoke out of turn because Joey Labus is factoring in also. And right now, you would certainly expect that Joey would get snaps ahead of our freshmen. I don't know that. I don't know how they're performing in practice, but it's safe to say that our freshmen will get more opportunity now, if only because of the fact that Cade's out of the mix.
And I did see that Marco was wearing a green hat today, which I don't know that he has in past weeks. Don, is that an indication that he's more familiar with that offense, that he can be assisting in play calling or not play calling, but signaling on the sideline?
So Marco had a green cap today?
Yes.
Does that mean Joey did not? I'm confused.
I think, could there have been 3 guys with green caps?
It's possible.
I think it was.
I didn't notice that because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but
Petrus,
Spencer had a green cap also, right?
Petrus, Linez, and Joey, I believe.
Oh, 3? Incidentally, so. A lot of people might wonder, why do you have more than one signal man? Not hard to imagine why. One of those guys is live, and the other 1 or 2 are dummy signalers, just to confuse the other team. You don't want anybody to be able to zero in on who's the live signal.
Lemansky, guys, should several QBs get on the field going forward? Future may depend on it. Boy, you'd like to have that luxury, but if they feel confident with Deacon, they're going to stick with Deacon unless he's really struggling.
Yeah, we have to put our best foot forward unless there's a real mixed opinion on who's better. Then it makes sense to go with the one that's got the consensus of the voting and the coaches.
STM basketball for Don. Should Iowa just drop a defensive lineman back in coverage more if opponents dink and dunk or quick pass on us all game?
Well, it's if a guy's not getting home, that's a possibility. You'll see that sometimes. Let's face it, if an interior lineman charges toward an offensive guard, he assumes the guy's going to keep coming. And you do see a lineman sometimes false charge and then back out of the line of scrimmage. So he's really occupying the blocker, and now the blocker's not able to redirect to another rusher. And the rusher would be somebody that's not supposed to come, like a linebacker. You see that sometimes to try to bait the guy into blocking a guy that he thinks is coming when in fact he's not. So there's some thought for that. Every now and then you see that. A lot of the balls that are batted down are simply a case of a lineman is trying to get in the backfield. He's stymied, and now he recognizes, because he's looking through the pass blocker, the quarterback is throwing in my direction. Even though I'm engaged by the blocker, all I got to do is put one hand up. Every now and then he's lucky enough to have the pass come right off his hand. You see that all the time. So good linemen realize if I can't get to the quarterback, I need to be able to gather myself and get my hands up in the throwing lane. There were any number of tip balls today, quite a few on both sides. So it does happen. And good D linemen understand just because I can't get to the quarterback does not mean I can't really positively affect the play with a tip pass.
Matt says, I wish people would drop the Doyle stuff. If it was that bad, then the defensive line would suck as well. It doesn't. I don't think it's that simple. I don't think you can diagnose it simply as you are, Matt, because Chris Doyle was said to have worked a lot with the offensive line. And, there is something to be said for the staff that's involved on both sides of the ball. No offense to George Barnett, but I've heard nothing but rave reviews about Kelvin Bell. They also have a pretty good coordinator leading the charge there on defense, but we can speculate to death on that. Let's go quick fire on these last few. Don, if Cade is out for the year, what is his eligibility? Well, he's at least got next year, and if he potentially had the year after, but my guess is that next year it's either next year or not. But we'll get official word on him, I'm sure, in a couple of days. CJ's World, Brian had a good game plan today until Cade got injured. Not sure why people can't see that decent aggression. Well, the only thing I'd say about that, CJ, is that we've seen that aggression in the first two drives of every game this year. It goes away. That's my problem with it, CJ. Now, today I give him credit because with Deacon, they continued to attack. But I'm just saying, I don't care what is called those first two drives, as far as me noticing a discernible difference from week to week with play calling, because that's been a habit. These first couple drives seem to be scripted out, and then, it seems like we're kind of drawing plays out of a hat. So, MC, why was Vine smiling every time he dropped a pass? I don't know. Don, if that was happening, and you'll go back and watch the TV tape, is that something you talk to Deontay Vines about if you're the coaching staff?
If I were the receiver coach, absolutely. You're sending the wrong message to your teammates, if nothing else.
No. Tyler, are you going to be at the Minnesota game, Corey? Let's see. That game is in Iowa City, correct? Is that game in Iowa City, or is it? I think it's in Iowa City. I'm
not sure.
I don't know. I don't have any plans to be at another game, so we'll see. We'll see if I make it down there again. Talk about how we open the field. We kind of talked about that earlier, Don, just with route trees and just different offensive play calling. I don't know if you have anything more to add on that, but opening up the field is kind of a general comment or general question.
Yeah, expanded playlist, and maybe introduce a concept that we haven't run before, and it's easy to install it with the players because you're taking video that somebody else ran that same concept and it worked for them. So we think our skill set at our receiver positions is similar to this other team. So not hard for them to imagine. We can install this concept and be able to execute it with the practice time that goes with it. Yeah, that's a possibility for sure.
Troy says, I feel like our linebackers do not fill holes or is as fast as the last year's linebackers. Higgins, Jackson make tackles. They're just not getting downhill, getting off blocks like Campbell and Benson. Is there truth to that, Don?
There's probably some truth to that. Campbell and Benson were not your average linebackers. They were exceptional. And I think Higgins and Jackson are doing a good job. I think Campbell and Benson would even tell you it's also a function of those guys in front of you because the good D linemen keep the linebackers clean. And I don't know that the D linemen are doing quite as good a job as a year ago. I'm no expert on it. Believe me, I haven't studied it. But that's a possibility, is that our linebackers are not being kept as clean as they were a year ago. And maybe that's a little bit of our problem too.
Brett says, Corey, do you think we're going 10-2 still now with your source saying that Cade could be done? I would still say 9-3 if you had to ask me right now based on the schedule. But man, they got to be able to run the ball against somebody, because if they can't run the ball consistently, Don, they're consistently getting behind the chains, they're going to be in a lot of ball games, and that's not a good thing because they're going to be playing teams they should beat. And a lot of those teams are going to be kept in these games because Iowa's not going to be able to consistently move the chains. And that's just kind of my concern moving forward. All right, let's go to our last caller of the evening, our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Kyle, welcome. We always enjoy Kyle jumping on with us.
How we doing tonight, fellas?
3.5 hours in, I'm ready for bed, Kyle. But you've been waiting on hold a long time, so I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, I have to start, since you did intro me with Iowa Smokehouse. Now that Cade McNamara is down, you have got to go to Iowa Smokehouse, because if this Bacon Hill nickname sticks, there is going to be a massive opportunity for Iowa Smokehouse to market Bacon Hill winning the Floyd of Rosedale here in a couple of weeks.
That's actually really a good point. Bacon Hill winning the Floyd of Rosedale. Okay. It's a little bit late at night for me to really think of it thoroughly, but Don?
There's Cooper DeJean has his own golf balls. I think we can find Bacon Hill some bacon sponsorship.
Man, wouldn't that be great? We start running Deacon Hill ads for Iowa Smokehouse with big bacon sticks, Don.
I'm not sure how Deacon's going to feel about all that.
Hey, I guarantee you he'd be all for it if it was...
You mean if it was something other than just bacon?
What's the old saying? Money talks, Don. Isn't that what they say? Oh, anyways, it's a good idea, Kyle. I'll have to pass that idea along.
Even if it's just for the a promo for the week or something, I think the image of him potentially carrying the pig trophy could be a fun one.
It's a good idea.
So I got a couple things while I was on hold there. I was just kind of messing around, looking through some numbers because I'm just curious. First interesting observation was there was 42 points scored tonight in Iowa fashion. There was one offensive touchdown in those 42 points.
That's a pretty ridiculous stat.
Had a 42 points.
So 6 touchdowns worth, and only one of those 6 touchdowns was an offensive touchdown. I know some of them were field goals. I get that.
Bunch of field goals, a scoop six, a punt return, and an offensive touchdown. That was it for the game.
7 field goals, is that right? I believe.
I think you might be right. Yeah, I think it was 7 field goals on the evening. Who, if I had to ask you off the top of your head, who's the leading pass catcher for Iowa at this point in the season in terms of yards?
Luke Lachey.
Correct. How many weeks over under until a wide receiver passes his season total of, I think, is it 131 yards?
A wide receiver?
before a wide receiver. Not Eric. So Eric All's the next one. Or no, sorry. It's let's see. Yeah, 131 yards. Eric All's at 116. How many weeks before a wide receiver passes his total of 131 yards?
What's the next closest receiver? Seth Anderson?
Seth Anderson at 68 yards, but he got most of that on a 36-yard catch on the first play of the season.
It's insane. I just don't know why we can't get receivers involved. I just don't get it.
Let's see, we played 5 games, over under 7.5 games.
7.5 total game. Okay, well,
So would you go over under if it was 7.5?
I would have to go over if it was 7. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
You're giving Seth 2.5 games to get what, 63 yards?
Well, I'll tell you this: they had Deontay Vines had 9 targets tonight. Don, do you think that's an indication that Deacon Hill is really comfortable with Deontay, or do you think that's Iowa trying to get Deontay the ball?
I don't know. It is kind of surprising because the guy that, if I had to pick one receiver, I haven't charted him, but seemed to be the most reliable receiver we've had in terms of catching a football. For a fact, and I don't know what I practice, of course, to integrate it, but it seemed like Seth Anderson was able to demonstrate his ability to run and catch. Even in those few snaps that he's had, he looked pretty impressive on any number of plays that went his direction.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nico's been pretty quiet. And
Nico's been really quiet.
I think the coach would tell you it depends on the play call, depends on progression, depends on how the defense plays. If it's one coverage, then this guy becomes the priority receiver on that particular concept. If it's a different coverage, a different receiver should get the ball. So a lot of times it's just predicated on how the defense plays. Maybe that's how Vines ended up with so many targets tonight. I don't know. It could be certainly part of that equation could be simply that Deacon has thrown a little bit more with Vines than some of the other receivers that also had a chance for the ball. It's hard to say.
So I've got a question for both of you, particularly Don. So, Coach, we talked about earlier in the show, I heard you discuss, all the injuries that have occurred and how it affects the players. And, at a certain point, you're in the middle of the season, everybody gets dinged up. It's got to be next man up.
Right.
If you are in the position of the Iowa athletic director and you're evaluating Kirk Ferentz and Brian Ferentz at the end of the season, and they come to you and they say, I know we set this 25 points per game metric, but we had all these injuries. What would your response to them be? I know we talked about it from a player's perspective, but talk about it from a coach's perspective. And is it a valid excuse for not meeting those kind of metrics?
My response, if I were in that position, would be injuries are a part of the game.
I agree. That's what I thought you would say.
But Don, real quick, just so you're aware, we were told, and I say we, the fan base, were told that the offensive line hasn't been better these last 2 years because it's dealt with attrition and youth and injuries. And we were told the wide receiver room wasn't very good last year because they dealt with a lot of injuries.
Right.
So
it kind of flies in the face of my comment that injuries are a part of the game.
It kind of flies in the face of the whole motto that Hayden Fry and Kirk Ferentz have stood for: next man in.
Right.
I have a problem with. I feel that's a double standard, Kyle. When a person, that's the mantra that you're promoting within the confines of Iowa. But when you or somebody on your coaching staff, when their accountability is put into question, you fall back on, we had injuries or we had this or that. It's all part of football, like Don said. So that's my only response to that. I hope that doesn't happen.
And I think, too, an interesting point just talking about the injuries is if you take all the position groups on offense besides maybe the tight end group, and I'm not even sure about that given Lachey's gone down, but the room that I've been most impressed with has actually been the running back room, and I think they've taken the biggest hits in terms of injury. So those guys have managed to Kamari Moulton has managed to pick up some of the slack. LaShawn Williams had a really impressive game. Jazz Patterson's had some nice moments in the absence of Caleb Johnson. I think those guys have been the best group of the offense.
And by the way, just real quick, you see the Iowa Purdue next week, Don. I want to get your take on this game. Tyrone Tracy, 21 carries today for $112.
21 carries?
I saw him 1 week earlier. Who were they playing last week? I can't remember.
They played Wisconsin, and he ran pretty well against Wisconsin.
That's right. I made the comment.
112 yards as a back today. Had 1 catch for 4 yards, but 21 carries for 112 yards. He's become their workhorse ahead of Devin Mockabee right now.
Well, do you think that he might be motivated for next Saturday? I suspect he will. I hope we're motivated to stop him because he's going to be motivated to show what he can do.
Yeah, before that game, he had 25 carries for 176 yards, so that'll take him over 300 yards rushing for the season.
That's 7 yards a carry. My gosh.
It's precisely 7 yards a carry.
He averaged 5.3 yards a carry today, Don, and he had a long of 14. So
Incidentally, our longest run today was 9 yards.
Yeah.
So tell me the keys for Iowa against Purdue. What do you know about Ryan Walters and how they're going to look different, how they look different than the era under Coach Braun that we've been accustomed to seeing?
I don't know that much about him. I did watch the Friday night game against Wisconsin, and I was very impressed with their quarterback. I could see where they're excited about him. Honestly, I thought their offense reminded me a lot of Jeff Brom's offense. I don't even know if there are any holdovers at all on offense, but they still threw the ball around. They had a good offense, moved the ball pretty effectively. They didn't win the game, but they turned it over. I think they had some unfortunate breaks, maybe penalties at the wrong time. But I remember thinking, I like Hudson Card. He's a good quarterback. And Tyrone's found a home as a running back, I guess. And I'm sure they won't hesitate to throwing the ball out of the backfield too, because he's at least got decent hands. Maybe not great hands, of course, but not that hard to catch a swing pass coming out of the backfield or a wheel route, something like that. So, honestly, if I was a Purdue fan, I'd be a little bit concerned. Wait a minute, our new head coach is a defensive guru, so why are we struggling so much on defense? It appears they're a little more vulnerable on defense, and maybe it's simply a function of the players they have coming back, of course, on that side of the ball.
Yeah, that's fair because we saw the same thing with Coach Brom. He's an offensive guy. Remember their first couple of years, their defense was really good. They couldn't score points, and later in his tenure.
Same thing with Coach Venables at Oklahoma last year. The defense there was terrible, and all of a sudden they're a lot better year 2. So,
Incidentally, I couldn't help but notice Louisville right now is 5-0.
Yeah.
Well, Purdue's only losses are Fresno State, who's 5-0, Syracuse, whose only losses to Clemson, and Wisconsin, whose only losses at Wazoo. So, they have 3 losses, but they're not necessarily horrible losses.
Purdue right now, Don. Purdue is, I think, the dark horse. I had kind of labeled the dark horse being Illinois preseason because Illinois had the favorable schedule, but Minnesota's not been impressive. Illinois has not been impressive. Nebraska's not impressive. Northwestern's not impressive. Iowa and Wisconsin, to me, are still the front runners given the schedule, given personnel. Purdue is that third team. Purdue probably doesn't have a chance to win the division, but this is the type of game where they could ruin one of these top 2 contenders' chances. If they go to Iowa City and win next week, this game is in Iowa City, yes? Yes, it's in Iowa City.
Yeah, it is. Well, they still play Ohio State at home and at Michigan as well.
Yeah, they got a tough schedule. They're not winning the West. But they get people's chances.
Do our listeners need to be reminded of who represented the West last year?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't think they were the best team last year. But again, given the schedule, they had a more favorable schedule than Illinois, and Illinois lost on a late drive from Michigan. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Purdue does have. It's not like they lost everybody off that team from last year. So,
Right.
And like you said, Tyrone Tracy's going to have motivation coming into Iowa City next week.
I just didn't think they would be able to beat Illinois that convincingly.
Yeah,
I haven't seen the stats, so maybe sometimes, of course, the score doesn't reflect the way the game really was played. But pretty impressive that they could win that convincingly.
Yeah, the stats were not that convincing, Don. Just so you're aware, the stats were not convincing at all. About the same as far as total yardage, right around 400 apiece. A little over 200 passing yards for each team. Between 150 and 190 rushing yards for each team.
Was it a disparity on turnovers then, or
disparity on penalties? Turnovers they were even, and it was kind of like Iowa. I'll tell you, Michigan State gifted Iowa quite a bit tonight with penalties. That's something we didn't talk about. A lot of penalties for Sparty tonight, and who knows what happens with this game if they don't commit so many penalties. The final numbers.
I'll tell you where the real disparity was, Corey, is third down efficiency. Illinois was 2 of 14, Purdue 8 of 13, over 50% on third down.
Yeah, and Iowa's going to struggle to win that category. They were 2 of 15, 2 of 13 on third down tonight. Michigan State wasn't good either, but Iowa's going to struggle to win that category. Iowa was +2 in turnovers and +7 in penalties. So, if they can play a clean game next week against Purdue. But Purdue played clean today, so that'll be a factor. You have to figure out a way to stop the run. I don't know. I haven't watched. I don't know where those carries came, what in what fashion those carries for Tyrone Tracy came, Don. But I'm surprised at how good he runs between the tackles. But he did run in high school. He's a running back coming out of high school, and he's got some shiftiness. We saw it at Iowa.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the best wide receivers we had were high school running backs. You know, Tim DeWhite was a high school running back. Robert Smith was a high school running back. Damon Gibson, a high school running back. You know, we converted them all into wide receivers because they were too small to be college running backs. But they certainly make good receivers.
Anything else, Kyle?
Well, just two other little quick points of order that I thought you guys might be curious about. So including the 2019 season through to the present, Iowa is 25-4 when they score first and 6 of 11 when they don't against the Power 5. So not including them, throwing out all the non-Power 5 games, but 25-4 against the Power 5 when they score first. That could be a field goal, a safety, whatever, and 6 and 11 when they don't score first.
I talked about that at the outset of the show. Getting ahead with the way Iowa plays, it's just almost impossible for them to come from behind. I give them credit they did it today from the third quarter behind, but there is something to be said for getting on the scoreboard first. I flashed back to Iowa State a few weeks ago, Kyle. Iowa blocked that field goal. You don't block that field goal, Iowa State gets on the board first, and we don't know what would have happened, but that would have been, had Iowa won that game still, that would have worked contrary to those numbers you just shared, and those are the types of plays that maybe we don't read into at the time as being monumental plays, but the numbers would indicate they are. And how about the missed field goal today from Michigan State, Don? That bounced off the upright. It's a game of inches. That field goal could have changed things.
Yeah, refresh my memory. Corey, what was the score at that time?
I believe it was 16-13, wasn't it, Kyle?
Yeah, that would have made it a touchdown to win for Iowa.
Yeah,
not
19.
Field goal wouldn't have tied it at that point.
Not 19-13?
Would have made it 19-13. So I mean that's a whole different. I mean, I know the punt return was the touchdown that we ended up getting, but I mean, you get the ball after that made field goal and you need a touchdown. It's a completely different offensive mindset. I thought it was interesting when you were on the Voice of College Football this week. I watched a little bit of that interview, and you were talking, and you brought up the it was the early fumble that Iowa didn't get on the board first, and you were talking about, you know, this could be a completely different game if Iowa scores 3 or 7. And Mark just shut it down like, oh, it would have been 31-7. And I was thinking, man, that was a big no score.
Yeah, I really respect Mark's opinion on a lot of things because he's a great college football guy, but Iowa is such an outlier in certain areas, and I really do believe that game last week would have been different had Iowa not fumbled the ball away on that drive where Eric All was in the red zone, Don. If they get on the board first, I have no doubt they probably would have still lost, but it would not have been anywhere close to 31-0. I could have seen it being 21-10.
Right.
Maybe there's not that big of a difference there, but there is. I mean, I just think there's something to be said for momentum, getting on the board first, etc. Getting in front. So,
Yeah, and we've proven any number of times that we're better protecting the lead than we are trying to play from behind.
Yeah.
It only makes sense because we're good on defense. Well, if we have some kind of edge on the scoreboard, then obviously the defense gives us a chance to protect that lead.
Last little nugget for you guys to think about before I let you guys go. 13 of the last 15 games, Iowa has lost time of possession, and I don't have my numbers pulled up right in front of me, but I believe it was by an average of about 5 or 6 minutes over the last 15 games. They've lost time of possession 13 times, and I think that includes 7 in a row.
Not typically a recipe for victory for Iowa.
Yeah,
right.
I'm curious to see because I mean, if the offense is bad, they're not on the field, so I would assume that's a trend that's probably going to continue the rest of the season.
But they did lose 5 games last year, and they lost the last 2 games prior to that. So they have lost like half of the games that you're bringing up. So,
true.
It's not like they're totally.
Yeah. It's true.
Before we sign off tonight, Corey, I would like to mention, maybe you've already done it before I got on, but I was impressed overall with the fan support. I thought they were excellent, all things considered. And, it was a frustrating game in a lot of ways, but I was impressed with how loud Kinnick was. I think the fans did a good job tonight, and they should be commended for it.
I agree with that. It was tough to cheer at certain points, but it's there's no doubt it's a loyal, passionate fan base.
It's a good job for whoever inherits it after Kirk walks away, Don. I'll continue.
Very attractive.
You're right.
Very attractive job. So.
As they used to tell recruits in Texas, we're the Dallas Cowboys of Iowa. That's what we are.
That's right.
That's true.
And that's when the Cowboys were good. Incidentally, they're good again this year, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think. Didn't they lose to Arizona, though?
Yeah.
See,
they had an ugly loss.
These post-game shows go so late that by the time I get to Sunday afternoon, I have to go back to sleep. Anymore.
Your fans appreciate it, though, Corey.
Yeah.
Oh, they do. And I will say to the, is it 320 right now that are still with us?
354 between the 2 channels.
354 between the 2 channels. Let's just take a moment. We have a 72-year-old co-host who is sharp enough at 1 a.m. to break down an entire route tree that was used sometime between now and 40 years ago, and can give marriage advice and makes jokes about dad bods. So I just want to say thank you, Don. We appreciate your contributions, and I find it incredible that you're still with us and still sharp enough at this time of night, because I certainly am not.
You might be wise not to accept all my advice on marriage, though. I don't know. I hate to steer somebody in the wrong direction.
I'm confident you didn't.
Thank you for the call, Kyle, as always, sir.
All right. Sleep well, guys.
All right, Don. Again, Iowa with the 26-16 win over Michigan State. And how about our RTI Threads player of the game? We'll mention him one more time. How about Cooper DeJean? 2 biggest plays of the game, the interception in the end zone where obviously he took away a potential touchdown. It was overthrown, but boy, he tracked the ball beautifully, got a foot down in bounds, which resulted in a touchback, Iowa ball. And then, of course, the 70-yard punt return for a touchdown in the 4th quarter that basically sealed the deal. Iowa would not look back. It was the lead-taking touchdown, right? So what a night for Cooper DeJean. And this defense in general, very good. And, Don, they've struggled with takeaways this year. They don't normally struggle in that category. But they created, how many takeaways did they have tonight?
4.
4 takeaways. That's going to get your averages back up. That'll make Phil Parker happy. Sebastian Castro got one. Jamari Harris got one. Cooper DeJean got one. And who am I missing?
There's a fumble. Who recovered the fumble though?
Was it Ethan Herkett?
I think so.
So there you go. So Iowa forcing turnovers and winning the turnover battle this evening. That's good news after last week's debacle. They didn't win much of anything last week, including the turnover battle. And obviously with our RTI Threads player of the game, it's a perfect opportunity to put one final plug in for RTI Threads. If you haven't checked out their awesome products, visit CD3LacesUp.com. Cooper DeJean's awesome apparel and his merchandise, including his custom golf balls. But all of RTI Threads athletes are available by going to RTIThreads.com, including apparel and merchandise for Carson Shire, for Zach Lutmer, Aiden Hall, a bunch of small town Iowa kids who have great futures like Cooper DeJean. Visit RTIThreads.com. And again, CD3LacesUp.com to buy into the Cooper DeJean apparel line. We appreciate RTI Threads and Cooper DeJean, not only for the highlights this evening, but for being part of the show throughout the season. So Don will be back next week. Iowa-Purdue, a Peacock game. I'm sure that's going to make a lot of Iowa fans happy. Peacock. Do you have Peacock yet, Don?
I don't even know I don't even know how to find that on my television.
Are you going to do it?
I'm going to be at the game, so I don't know if there's any way I can tape it. I'm not sure.
You got to get Peacock.
How do you do that? Is it going to require me to give up some money?
I think it's $10 a month, but you can cancel it right after the first.
I see. Well, maybe I can afford that then.
We'll get it. We'll send you one of the super chats, Don, and we'll get that. We'll call it a Peacock super chat. But anyways, yeah. So we'll look forward to Iowa-Purdue next week, 2:30 p.m. kick on Peacock, and of course, you and I will be live for Iowa Postgame with Coach John Patterson. It'll be an earlier game, so we won't get done with the postgame show so late. Don, appreciate you staying up not for 4 hours. We didn't make it to the 4-hour mark, but 3.5 plus. As always, it's a pleasure, and hopefully, we're talking about another win next week.
Time well spent. Time well spent, Corey.
Thank you, Coach. For Coach John Patterson, I'm Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Have a great night, folks. We will talk to you quite soon.